Trustee Bernal, the flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And Trustee Patel, will you lead the land acknowledgement?
Yep. The Pacifica School District acknowledges that we gather on the unceded ancestral homelands of the Ramaytush Ohlone people. As guests, we humbly extend our gratitude to the Ramaytush Ohlone elders and community. We recognize that we benefit from living and working on their traditional homeland, and we affirm their sovereign rights as First Peoples. As the original stewards of this land, the Ramaytush Ohlone understand the interconnectedness of all things and the importance of maintaining harmony with nature. Likewise, Pacifica School District commits to teaching our school community how to be responsible stewards of this land.
Thank you. The district digitally records the audio and video portion of the meetings. All recordings are kept in the superintendent's office for 30 days and are available during that time period for inspection by members of the public on district equipment without charge. Speakers wishing to address the board on agenda or non-agenda items, please submit your first and last name and agenda item you wish to speak on in the Q&A area of the webinar. Please do not submit comments or questions in the Q&A area. You will be called to address the board. Your microphone will be unmuted and you may speak for up to 3 minutes. After you have spoken for 3 minutes, your microphone will be muted. The board met in closed session regarding the public employee performance evaluation, titled Superintendent New Goals, and no action was taken.
I think I need to take roll.
Okay. Oh, okay. Well, please take roll.
Trustee Bernal.
Here.
Trustee Burkini. Here. Trustee Doggett.
Here.
Trustee Patel.
Here.
Trustee Villalobos.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So we're doing approval of the minutes. Are there any questions regarding the minutes of March 9th, 2022 regular board trustee meeting? And let me go around the room. Let's see. Trustee Bernal.
No questions, but I think tonight's March 9th, so.
Oh, yes. Approval of the minutes of March. Oh, approval of the minutes of February 9th.
Oh, okay.
Approval of the minutes of February 9th.
Okay. Yes, for February 9th.
Thank you for catching that. Trustee Villalobos.
No questions.
Trustee Burkini.
No questions.
Trustee Patel.
No questions.
Do I have a motion to approve the agenda and consent agenda of the minutes, sorry, of February, was it 9th?
February 9th, yes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of February 9th.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Barbara, will you take the roll call vote, please?
Yes. Trustee Bernal.
Yes.
Trustee Burkini. Yes. Trustee Doggett.
Yes.
Trustee Patel.
Yes.
Trustee Villalobos.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 5-0.
Okay. Approval of the agenda and consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda will be approved with one motion, which is not debatable and which requires a unanimous vote for passage. If any member of the board, the superintendent, or public so requests, any item shall be removed from this section and placed in the regular order of business following the approval of the consent agenda. Are there any questions regarding the agenda and consent agenda?
Yes, I'd actually like to pull the item, I think it's 10C, the Bond Oversight Committee Annual Report. We're going to pull that off the agenda and reconvene the committee and look for some new members, and we'll bring that back at a different time.
Trustee Bernal.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to ask if we can move item 10L, or excuse me, item 10O up to right after 10L.
And I was going to ask if we could move up 10M, the lottery update, just somewhere up, maybe after H, because if there's any speakers, they might have little kids who either need to do homework or go to bed. And so this is going to be an extra long meeting.
Laverne, could you repeat that? I'm sorry. Which one did you want to move?
It's 10M, the lottery update, to move it up.
If we're going to move that, then I'll just take back what I said before, and we'll just go with the regular order on the rest of it.
Okay. So Kai, where would you like to put that? Do you want to put it before COVID or after COVID?
Where would you like to put it, Laverne? Are you okay with it coming after COVID?
Yes,
Perfect.
thank you.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve the revised agenda and consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the revised agenda and consent agenda.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Barbara, will you take the roll call vote, please?
Yes. Trustee Burdall,
Yes?
Trustee Burkini,
Yes.
Trustee Doggett,
Yes.
Trustee Patel,
Yes.
Trustee Villalobos.
Yes,
Thank you. Motion passes 5-0.
Great. Let's see where I am on my script here. All right, communications. Speakers wishing to address the board on agenda items or non-agenda items, please submit your first and last name and the agenda item you wish to speak on in the Q&A area of the webinar. Please do not submit comments or questions in the Q&A area. You will be called to address the board. Your microphone will be unmuted and you may speak up to 3 minutes. After you have spoken, your microphone will be muted. All right, LSEA.
There she is. Perfect. Nicole Sayers is having a hard time getting in, so just know that as Megan goes, that we may be a delay in terms of getting Nicole in. Miss Ellsburn.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hello. LSCA had a union meeting last Thursday. Thank you, Trustee Patel, for attending. Topics of focus and concern were mask mandate changes, summer bond work, and special ed issues with some of our contracted employees. We shared this information with Heather on Monday. We are eager to hear the discussion tonight on masks moving forward, and we are hoping that staff is notified promptly about any impacts or changes ahead. We are happy to hear work is moving along with the bond, but are also anxious about the impacts it will have on many of our classrooms, requiring more work for teachers to pack and unpack their rooms. We hope timelines are met by all so we can have a smooth start to school in August. I am personally thankful for the work of our Director of HR, Dr. Carla Chavez-Torres, and longtime LSEA negotiating team members, Rachel Merlot and Jonathan Harris, for their work together to get our contract in working order. There have been many edits and changes over the years, and we needed a cohesive and current document. I know our members will appreciate your work too. We look forward to negotiations on March 23rd. Our next union meeting is Thursday, March 24th at 3:30. Board members, please let me know if you'd like to attend. Thank you.
Thank you. TSEA.
Let me just check in with Nicole. She was going to switch computers. The other question that I would ask maybe Megan, would you send me a text, is can you see the question and answer section? I'm not seeing people sign up in the question and answer section. So, and this seems like a little disruptive, but when we have Megan sees us, she's now in the question and answer. Okay, we just need to get Nicole in, and while we are waiting, we could have the trustees talk about their events and the correspondence that they had, and we'll work on getting Nicole in.
We'll go around the room for trustee correspondence. And trustee Burkini.
Okay. First, I wanted to start out with some great things I saw around town. I wanted to give a shout out to the Cabrillo Green team. I drove down the street and saw, it seemed like 30 people out in front of Cabrillo this weekend, cleaning up the campus and just having a great time. And it was just great to see people out there just really loving their community and loving their school. So that was great to see. I did get several letters about masks. It's been very mixed. So we'll have more talk about that soon. I attended 2 workforce housing meetings, and I'm looking forward to some of the things that are coming up around that. I wanted to just do a quick shout out to Women's History Month. It is Women's History Month, and in a profession that is completely dominated by women. I think I want to give a shout out to all of us that work really hard to get our kids educated and move us forward. And I wanted to just read a little quote by, the quote is from Malala Yousafzai. And it says, "I raise my voice, not so that I can shout, but so that those without a voice can be heard. We cannot all succeed when half of us are held back." So thank you, women of the school district, and happy Women's History Month.
Thank you. Trustee Patel.
Thank you for that update. That was a great quote. For me, my updates are I received some communications regarding the mask policy from staff and parents. I had a one-on-one with Heather between the last board meeting and this one, and then I attended the LSBA meeting as a listener.
Thank you. Trustee Bradal.
Okay. I had a couple of the workforce housing meetings also. We're getting ready to have open houses out at Odstead. So looking forward to that and getting that information to the community. Had the music department meeting, the special ed social that they have every month. I really enjoy going to that, and the Pacifica Collaborative. And also received emails about the mask mandate and also about an update on the fields.
Okay. For me, I also got several letters regarding mask. I attended Dr. Olson's Q&A session about the school lottery. And I also got emails regarding Facebook posts about the school lottery. And I did want to just say that, just so everyone knows, the Brown Act requires local governments to conduct open and public meetings. And it's to provide public access so everyone. So going forward in the future, I already addressed this in the email to the person that emailed me because it wasn't the nicest email, but it's inappropriate to tag board members in Facebook posts because according to the Board Act, we can get in trouble if we start commenting. And we are very much listening to our community, where you can email us, you can use appropriate avenues to address us, but in the future, please don't think because we're not replying on any public message boards that we're ignoring you. We are not. I wanted to make sure that I address that because I don't want people to think that because we're not replying on Facebook, we're not listening to you. We are. And just the way the lottery discussion came up, I was very pleased to see Dr. Olson take the time to have a meeting and answer questions around the lottery. And just to show you that it is on the agenda today, we are listening to our community, but just so everyone out there knows, we can't respond in a public forum like that. We're not allowed to, so don't think we're not listening because we're not replying. And I wanted to just put that out there.
I have CSEA President Nicole Sayers on the line. Are you prepared for her comment?
Yes.
Oh, wait, Laverne, go ahead, Laverne.
Should I wait until after to do my report?
You're muted, Heather.
All right, too many devices. Why don't we do all of the trustees, and then we'll go back to CSEA president.
All right, Trustee Villalobos. Sorry, I should have gone last, but go ahead.
I too also received emails from parents and the community regarding the mask mandating lifting, and also follow up on our fields, and also PSD partnerships with the city. I wanted to just say I was updated on the progress of our fields, and the community member who wrote to me requested that we have updates 3 times a year. And this group of parents and community members are organizing to partner with us and take all the time and energy. And, you know, we have ongoing committees throughout the year that all the board members are assigned to. And so I just want to throw this out there that maybe it would be beneficial to integrate this new committee that's forming around our fields, to maybe invite them to our joint articulation meeting. The joint articulation meetings are, 2 or 3 times a year? And they're with Jefferson High School District, the City of Pacifica, the Water District. Am I missing anybody? So it would be appropriate if some representative from this new committee could maybe join us so that we can hear the updates in the committees. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I attended the superintendent chat right before break. I had my one-on-one with Heather. I also went to the Ortega PTO meeting, and their conversations were surrounded about the fields and the cost until they actually start to work on their fields through the bond, and the upcoming basket auction. I also attended the enrollment lottery information meeting. And I do want to comment on this because ever since I've been on the board, which is 8 years now, it's public knowledge that I've just put it out there that we need to update our system. And so maybe if we could take steps, even if they're baby steps, towards updating that system. I also went to the parcel tax committee meeting, and that's one of my assigned committees as a non-voting member. And during the meeting, there was a comment about how the parcel tax set up our district for supporting students and staff during the pandemic. And the parcel tax ballot language allows Pacifica School District to support our library technicians. The library technicians played an integral part of providing the Chromebooks to all the students during the pandemic for virtual learning. It also allowed the 5th grade class who couldn't go to outdoor ed during the pandemic to go this year. So even though they were 6th graders, there was a 5th grade class and 6th grade class that got to go because of the parcel tax. And most importantly, the parcel tax pays the salary for 6 teachers. The president of the committee really wanted to get the message out there that he wanted to extend the appreciation to the parents in the community who made all of this possible by voting for it. And this is a heartfelt thank you to the community for making it possible.
Thank you. Okay, now we can do CSEA.
Okay, Miss Nicole Sayers. President Sayers, can you hear us? President Sayers? Nicole? Hang on, let me text her. I just had her. Yeah, can you hear us?
Hello?
Hello, there we go. Hang on one second. Nice and loud. Okay.
Okay, hello, and thank you for your patience. My name is Nicole Sayers, and I'm the president of CSEA. I'd like to thank the district for sending 5 of our paraprofessionals to the CSEA's 25th Annual Paraprofessionals Conference. This conference will feature both live and on-demand sessions so that those attending can pull up the sessions when it works for them. This is really a nice way for members to attend the conference without relinquishing any of their student responsibilities. Wednesday, March 2nd, CSEA collaborated with LSEA on a little out of the blue project that offered appreciation and some small snacks to the staff at all school sites, as well as LMAC and the district office. I would like to extend a big thank you to LSEA and Megan Ellsburn and Charlotte Jacobs for including CSEA in this, because we always like to show others our appreciation for their hard work. On Friday, March 4th, our unit ratified our COVID-19 relief MOU that was negotiated with the district. Some of the highlights of this agreement include a $150 stipend per month for unit members who volunteer to be trained for the duration of the 2021-22 school year, retroactive to July 1st, 2021. The extension of COVID-related leave for 10 days minus any days that they've already used. Natural disaster issues such as supplying filtration systems when needed and offering N95 masks to work crews that have to work when others are asked to stay home due to poor air quality. Negotiations began on Monday, March 7th between CSEA and the district. CSEA offered several proposals to the district that they are currently considering. We have 2 more dates planned and look forward to equitable negotiation for current and future classified employees. Finally, our CSEA Above and Beyond Awards this month went to Mary Notmeyer and Julia Hall. Mary Notmeyer supports the FMO department and supports teams, school sites, bond projects. She also assists with the facilities use program for work order production and distribution and many other areas. Julia Hall is always there to help her coworkers. She's helped with training, supporting several new hires, and she creates documentation and procedures for all library media technicians to use, as saving them time and the effort. In addition, Julia runs a very tight ship. Her library is immaculate. The library collection at Ortega is robust, and she manages to read to every class every time a class visits the library. As always, I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you for being so flexible with your technology.
No worries. We have some technical difficulties over here.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
What's up next is superintendent correspondence.
So I will share correspondence when we talk about COVID, because I received a fair amount of correspondence regarding that. But the one thing I want to make people aware of is that we are hosting 3 workforce housing meetings, as well as also beginning again with our workforce housing task force. So on March 31st, after school, so probably about 3:30 to 5:30 or 6, we're going to host for all staff the first event around workforce housing, and that will be right at the Odsted field, at the Odsted property. So that's the March 31st, Thursday, March 31st, and then Saturday, April 2nd, and Wednesday, April 6th. So we'll get the information out to everybody, but I want all staff to hold on to the 31st for an optional workforce housing / celebration. It'll be the first time we've come together since the pandemic, and since it will be outside, it can be done so safely. Thank you.
District business, district goals, the district values, the goals provided in our local control accountability plan, the LCAPs, and strategic plan. All of our district board agenda items are tied to these goals. One or more goals are listed in the description of each board agenda item. The details of each of those district goals can be accessed on our district website at www.pacificasd.org. All right, 10A, LSEA Report of Celebration in Honor of Patty McNally.
Excuse me, Trustee Doggett, there were two public speakers who wish to address the board.
Oh, okay.
You mind if I introduce them?
Yes, please do.
Dr. Torres, we had Michelle Gray as one of the speakers and Ms. Phelps. If we could promote Michelle Gray first.
Yes.
Hi, all. Can you hear me? It's Michelle.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you so much for giving me a couple minutes, and I will be staring at the timer for sure this time. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of an update. I've been working with Josie and her team and a bunch of wonderful folks in the community and a couple of people in sports organizations, targeting a few of our school fields and Odsted. So we've been looking at Ballymar, Ortega, IBL, and Odsted. We really need to take care of these outdoor classrooms as much as we care about our indoor classrooms. They're so important for our kids to be able to get out there and run around and do things safely. So happy to report that with the Pacifica Girls Softball League, a wonderful extension of their collaboration from the Cabrillo field, they're taking on the Ballymar field. And so they have already put in a lot of time and effort and really reworked that infield and have started to chip away at the outfield. They're starting to have their T-ball teams come and practice during the week. So it's a real jolt of life back into this field. And we're so excited about that and excited that their agreement is passed earlier in the meeting. So thank you to them and thank you to Josie and her team as well for being able to move that along. The Ballymar PTO has been incredibly supportive. They are also putting forth money to help regrade the track at Ballymar. And I know that is on the budget for later. So they are fully funding the track regrade at Ballymar. And so I just want to give a shout out to Angela Diaz and that wonderful PTO. Also want to talk about Ortega and IBL. I've been at their PTOs and we're trying to figure out what we can do with their fields. Ortega, we understand that the turf is coming in next year, but they still have a whole nother school year really before that happens. And so there's some things we feel we can do to make that safer for the kids. And for IBL, that PE program is a huge draw for folks. It's one of the reasons we go there now. And we got to get that field in better shape. And so looking to partner with a couple of community organizations to come in and help. So stay tuned, lots of great work already done and hopefully a lot of good work to continue. I am a little concerned about all the bond work coming up. The staff is just, I think we could multiply them by 3 and it still wouldn't be enough in the facilities group. So we need to get more folks over there to make sure we can keep up all this good work and maintenance for the longer term. The last thing I just want to say is I'm a parent council rep for IBL. And so we're meeting with Will on the LCAP next week. So we're excited to talk to him on that. And the Alna Flynn nominations are all coming in now. Our deadline for the various schools was March 15th. So we're already starting to see them come in and we're very excited. We have a date of May 20th for the event and we'll look forward to communicating more about that in the future. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Michelle.
The next speaker is Mrs. Phelps.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. I'm a 3rd grade teacher at Ortega Elementary, and I just wanted to bring up some concerns about what's been going on with special education. We've gone through 4 school psychologists in the last 4 years. We are currently without one. We just lost the one we had this year. Our current psychologist that just left wasn't attending meetings and was not submitting reports. We've gone through 3 teachers in the SDC in 3 years, and we currently do not have an occupational therapist that can meet the needs of assessments that have already been expressed by parents. So I'm just concerned about the time that happens between parents and staff meeting to make an assessment plan and the actual assessment occurring. I'm concerned that we are out of compliance as far as what that looks like legally. Is there a possibility of having some of these assessments completed by a qualified person, regardless of whether they are hired by our district or not? And I just really would like to know how we can move forward on this. That's all.
Thank you for your questions. We don't typically respond to those unagendized questions, but we will get you a response either through John Bartfield or Patrick Jackson.
All right, sorry about missing the public comment, but let's move on to the LSEA report of celebration in honor of Patty McNally.
I'm just getting my computer organized here. Are we good? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
It's hard to believe it's been well over a year since we lost our dear Patty McNally in November of 2020. Last year, LSEA came together to begin the tradition of celebrating and honoring Patty during the week in March, which coincides with her birthday, March 17th. These words, written by longtime PSD teacher Connie T, capture Patty perfectly. Patty McNally was the ultimate teammate with her passion and active involvement with her students, staff, family, friends, LSEA, Pacificans Care, and PEF. We hope that you will honor her memory by being a teammate too. We encourage all PSD staff to honor Patty during the week of March 14th. We have asked our members to deliver some lessons around the framework of being a teammate. Last year, we started a shared Google Drive folder of ideas and lessons and continue to add more. One of the many things that Patty was passionate about in her classroom was sharing literature with her students. Using picture books and chapter books, Patty would create lessons that elicited emotions and started deep conversations with her students. These lessons would last a lifetime. Teammate by Peter Gollenbach was one of her all-time favorites. It's the story of Jackie Robinson and the powerful stand his teammate Pee Wee Reese took when Jackie joined the Dodgers in the 1940s. LSEA leadership and retired members worked together to complete a read aloud of this book that our current members can share with their students. On Friday, March 18th, we invite the entire Pacifica community to participate and join Patty's team. We'd like to see everyone wearing the colors or jerseys of your favorite team, school, club, or group. It is important to LSEA that the love, devotion, and hard work that Patty brought to Pacifica for over 40 years continues to inspire us and our students. Patty cared so deeply and taught others to care by her example. Patty did so much for each of us, and her passions continue to inspire us. We want to share that inspiration with all of our students. We hope that you will honor Patty's memory by being a teammate next Friday. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Megan.
All right, 10B, Parcel Tax Oversight Committee Annual Report.
Thank you, Trustee Doggett. We did have the chairperson, Richard Zaromsky, scheduled to speak tonight, and I don't see him in the attendees, but Janelle Jones has offered to step in. She is also on the committee, so if somebody could please elevate Janelle. And Richard, if you're on the iPhone, if you could raise your hand, I don't see your name as an attendee. Then if we could please bring Janelle Jones forward.
Josie, it seems that I am not able to bring anybody forward, so somebody's going to have to help.
Janelle's there.
I'm here.
Thank you, Janelle, for stepping in.
Sure. Good evening. I wanted to let you know that the Parcel Tax Oversight Committee met on February 15th. And we are looking for additional representation from Ocean Shore, Valley Mar, and Sunset Ridge. But we do have from the other schools and from the community. And we made sure that every item that the parcel tax is paying for goes along with the requirements of the parcel tax. That includes paying for the library technicians, the BITSA program, the payment of 6 teachers, the funding of outdoor education, funding for school gardens. And I think that's it right now. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Janelle, and thank you, Trustee Villalobos, for also coming to the meeting with us. We appreciate that support.
All right, do we have any questions from the trustees? I'll just go around the room quickly. Trustee Villalobos, any questions?
No questions.
Trustee Burkini?
No questions.
Trustee Patel?
No questions.
Trustee Burdall?
The only thing was, so we paid for 2 years of the outdoor ed this year because they weren't allowed to go last year. So that was in there, I'm assuming. And so we're all set for 1 grade next year.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, just want to make sure. So no one, well, some did miss, but most of them got outdoor ed even during the pandemic. Okay.
Yes, it was offered to everybody.
All right, I have no questions. Item C, we've pulled from the agenda tonight. So we're on item D, update on school operations and COVID. Dr. Olson.
I'm back. Oh, just in time. Okay. I am happy to present on this topic at this point. A lot has changed since we presented last time, so much has changed. Will, if you wouldn't mind changing that, there's lots of information that I'd like to share with you, and so I'll make the presentation and we can do public comment, but we did hear from a large number of parents, and I want to make sure I represent some of that. I won't certainly be able to get every piece of that. There's also a fair amount of staff input on this topic, so we'll share that along with the presentation. So this is a very different presentation than we made about a month ago, which is that the cases have come down quite considerably, and this is San Mateo data, but there are about 10 cases per 100,000, which is decreasing significantly because a week ago it was 16 cases per 100,000. There are currently 80 new cases in San Mateo County. This is not in Pacifica, compared to 126 cases a week ago. And then if we just keep that in context, on January 8th, the case rate was 239 cases per 100,000. And you will see that's pretty comparable to the Pacifica data that the Pacifica School District data that we have as well. Next slide. So this is the latest version of our dashboard. As you can see, in January, at the end of January, we were at 32 cases, then 22, and going down ever so significantly, where so far this week we've only had 1 positive case. Next slide, please. So if we look at, we took the number of cases that we had over the course of the year, and one of the kind of interesting parts about this is that at the end of August, we had 8 cases at Valimar, and that was a very, very dark day. And then you look at that number of cases compared to the number of cases that we had in January. It's just really shocking. So almost as quickly as it went up, it did go back down. And so that's the roller coaster that we saw in that slide. Next slide, please. So if we look at the total number of cases we've had so far, and remember that this is only the ones that ended up on the dashboard, that sometimes we caught a huge number of cases, especially at IBL right after the winter break. And so those students were not in school, and so there was no exposure that they had to their teachers or their fellow classmates. Those cases didn't get recorded on the dashboard. So the dashboard are if there's a notification that goes out as a result of the positive case, and it's both students and staff. So there were 352 cases totally this year, and a lot of those happened in January. Next slide, please. The other piece that we want to just kind of compare this to is in January, really a significant number of student absences. If we look at the 14th, there were over 500 and almost 70 students were absent. That's about 1/6 of our students. And we can really almost see the reverse of that is kind of the spike up and then coming back down. Next slide, please. If we look at staff absences, and we looked at January 18th compared to May 8th, it's a comparable number of absences, but I want to just point out that it's not necessarily the same as the absences or the same as the absences in January, because this includes 2 custodians that are on vacation. People are starting to take either medical appointments or vacations. So these are not necessarily COVID-related absences, and on March 8th, all classroom teaching positions were filled. Next slide, please. So we are here tonight to talk about the changing guidance. Next slide. So on February 28th, California Department of Public Health updated the masking guidance for school. And so up until this point, masks were required for both students and staff in both K-12 and childcare settings. That expires on March 11th at midnight. And so on the following Monday, the universal state mandate is no longer in position. California Department of Health has shifted its guidance away from that mandate to a strong recommendation that students, teachers, and others continue to mask indoors in school settings. So that's an important piece. Another important piece that we're going to talk about is California affirms the authority of local health departments and local educational agencies, that's us, we're a LEA, to maintain or establish masking requirements for K-12 school settings in their respective jurisdictions. And then actually, Megan Ellsburn pointed this out to me, is that it used to be that the requirements for Cal OSHA were that unvaccinated workers had to wear masks indoors. They updated their guidance as well. And so Cal OSHA strongly recommends masks to be worn indoors by unvaccinated workers. Next slide, please. So 2 pieces of input that I'm going to share with you today. I'm sorry. Is we did a staff poll that essentially had 2 questions and then anything else for consideration. One is, do you think that it is a good idea to transition from mandated masks indoors to strongly recommended masks, recommended that we wear masks indoors? And I did not expect this outcome, but 48% said yes, it is time. 38% said no, it's too early. And then 14%, almost 14% said I don't know at this point. We're going to break that down by grade level span. So next slide, please. So we did ask, this was an anonymous survey, but we did ask people to identify by their grade level span because we felt like maybe it might be different. I expected it to go, again, the opposite way, is I thought that the preschool through second grade folks would be the most concerned about wearing masks indoors. So 51% did say that it's time, and about 43 people responded to the survey, said yes, that it's time. 42% said not yet. That was the group that had the fewest number of I don't knows. So an interesting point about that. The other group that was on the it's time is the people that were across multiple grade span had 53% say that it was time to transition from mandated masks indoors to strongly recommended. I think we can turn the slide on that. Third through fifth grade was even between yes and not yet. So I thought that was interesting. And then the second question for staff was, will you wear a mask indoors around other people at work? And 48% said yes. 33% said that it depends on the circumstances. One person put in the other considerations is that when around children, I will wear a mask like that. That's the way, and people responded very much in that way. And so 12.7% said that they would not wear a mask around other people at work. At this point, let me actually just take this. I know that there's going to be some public comment, but there were a few parents that were not able to make there were a few parents that were not able to make today's presentation. So I think when it comes time for public comment, I will make sure that their points of view are shared. They may have made the meeting, and if that's the case, I don't need to display that. But one of the things that we always look at is what are other districts planning to do? And overwhelmingly in San Mateo County, most are going to follow the health and the San Mateo County health guidelines and the California Department of Public Health guidelines, which is strongly recommend masks indoors. 3 districts are going to push their timeline out a little bit so that they are going to transition to the guidance after following their spring break. For a few of those districts, the only difference is that some of them didn't have the February break, and so their spring break is at the end of March, where our spring break is at the end of April. Next slide, please. So I get asked a lot, do we plan to continue COVID testing? And I say that we will continue our weekly pool testing and rapid response testing with Concentric as long as it is provided and funded by the state of California. I expect that to be in place through the end of the school year. I can't make the promise of that, but based on what I think is going to happen, I do believe that we're going to have that in place. In the future, like in the following school year, I think what you're going to see is that shift away from screening or surveillance, like trying to assess the amount that's in the population, to more response testing. So if there are symptoms, taking a response test to figure out what that is. We have not picked them up yet, but we did get an email today that we will have at-home test kits for every family member and every student to take with them for spring break so that they could take a rapid test if they have symptoms when they return, so that that testing will be happening. The other thing is that we could not be talking about any guidance without talking about vaccines. Vaccines are still a very important part of keeping COVID in check. And so on the coast and in the North Bay, there are 3 regular vaccine clinics. San Mateo County has a vaccine clinic nearly every day, but Saturdays in Half Moon Bay, Sundays in Daly City, and Thursdays in South San Francisco. We are incredibly fortunate. Like, we have 99% of our staff. So if we have 300 staff members, 296 of those staff members are vaccinated. We've had a very, very high rate of staff vaccinations. We also encourage any family members or any students to be vaccinated, and those clinics are available. We'll send flyers out in the weekly update. The one thing that they suggest is making the appointment, and you can make appointments for those clinics either on that with using that phone number or using myturn.ca.gov. Next slide, please. Okay, so here is the work that we need to talk about today. Is that as I said, it is within the purview of the local educational association agency, that's us, the school district, that we can follow the guidance that is written with a shift to strong recommendation to wear masks. The second piece is that we could continue to mandate masks indoors with a timeline for moving to CDPH guidance. So like those school districts that said we will wait until the week after spring break, that is one option that we have. You always want to have an off-ramp, right? Is if we're going to choose to be more restrictive, then we have to have a little bit of a plan for how we're going to get closer to that guidance or when we're going to get closer to the guidance. If we're going to choose to do that, we would have to have a motion, and I have a template for some things if we choose to do that. And then kind of the third option that we will have is continue to mandate masks until the end of the school year. Same thing, board action would need to be taken. We could take a vote to follow the guidance as it is written. That's absolutely within our purview. We have mostly subscribed to following guidance, and it served us very, very well. But one of the reasons why, and it is my recommendation that we follow the guidance. I think we're going to have a very robust discussion about this. But the reason it is my recommendation around following the guidance is that was very well thought out, and we are having great success with minimizing the number of cases that we have at school. And I do think that it's time. And because those decisions are made by health experts as opposed to us choosing that, it just makes it very clean and direct. But like I said, it is within the purview of the school board to be more restrictive if we choose. Next slide. So if we took board action, we would just need to have a short explanation about why masks are still needed, why it's in everyone's best interest to continue to require them. And then we would talk about the California Department of Health encourages local decision-making, and we would talk about that. And then based on this rationale we put a date to, masks will be required until the end of the school year, until this date. And then after that, masks would be strongly recommended. And then we could include language that gave the district room to revisit the timeline if the number of cases went up or the number of cases really went down. So those are the elements that we would want to include in a board action. Next slide. So I think questions, discussion, possible action, and time for public comment.
Okay, do we want to take public comment first? Or do we want to, any of the trustees want to speak now?
I think public comment should be first.
Okay, let's go with public comment.
You have Karen Dorsey would like to speak on this topic. I'm going to try to promote her.
Hi, my name is Karen Dorsey. Hi, I'm a parent of 3 children at Ballymar, And I'd like to talk tonight to urge you to continue the universal masking. At the end of the day, I think that the most important thing about our district is that we've always acted as a community, and it's the community's job to protect its most vulnerable people. In this case, I think that's our elderly and our very small children who cannot be vaccinated yet. I think that many people are in a similar situation as me, that they either have very small children who can't be vaccinated or are in close contact with our children's grandparents. And so I would like the board to consider the fact that our children are often the vector of infection in our families. And so I would like people to consider that it's not just the children that we're talking about, but our entire community who we need to represent. One of the things that the CDC always talks about, layers of protection. And I think that one of the main things that they always talk about is a well-fitting mask, which one of the problems with small children is that even though I know I bought my kids, children's N95 masks, they're not actually approved because children N95 masks don't properly fit like an adult mask does. So even though I can go out into the world and feel relatively safe in my well-fitting mask, I don't feel that my children are as protected with their mask as I am. And then one of the other things that I am worried about is that as an adult, I can weigh the consequences of my actions. I can say, well, I'm willing to make this risk, or I'm not willing to make this risk, but we're talking about children here. And although some children might do what their parents ask them to do, we all know children do what they want to do as well. And so that also worries me, whether they will do what we ask them to do as parents. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Crystal Lee is the next speaker.
Hi, this is Crystal. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. It's Crystal Liu. So looking at the different options, I would be in favor of option 2, which is, in my opinion, more of a wait and see approach, to give it a couple weeks. I mean, I don't know what the timeline is before spring break, after spring break, but I do like waiting a little bit after a lot of the indoor mask mandates have been removed for the wider population, because from a kid's perspective, I think it's really important that, the vaccination rate of children, at least I don't have that data. I know it's voluntary and we've been submitting it to the individual schools, but I haven't seen that data. I don't know how many kids are vaccinated within a classroom. And as Karen mentioned, there's different layers of protection, right? And one of them is vaccination. We don't know which kids have been vaccinated, and I'm not saying like we should identify them, but we should know what percentage. We should have a scientifically backed rationale, like if 80% of the kids are vaccinated, then we can go without masks. And there is just not that level of detail that we're getting into. And so I feel like the general guidance that's given by San Mateo might not necessarily apply to this particular school. I think another thing that's important that differentiates children's in classrooms versus parents going into a supermarket where, indoor masks are no longer required is that kids are in a classroom that's fairly small. And when they move around, it's not like they're moving in a giant grocery store at Safeway where you're pretty much socially distanced from most people. Even nowadays, right, when you're in line, you have to be, stand on the red dot or whatnot. And that's just not possible with kids. Unfortunately, we're limited, especially at Valmar, which is where my daughter is. The classrooms are small, right? And each class can have up to 24 kids. So my child sits at a desk with 3 other students and they're 8 inches apart, right? And they're on a sitting rug where they're very close together as well. And I think that's a key distinction between children in a classroom versus parents, in an indoor environment. So I definitely think the approach where we wait, see if rates increase as the indoor mask mandate for parents changes, and to take that information and learn from it. I wouldn't be for option 3 because data constantly changes, right? And we don't know what's going to happen 2 weeks from now. So I definitely like a wait and see approach. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would you be okay if I just read out some of the things that I heard from the group of parents?
Yes, please.
Okay, so this is certainly not every parent that we heard from, but I took 3 parents that were in the Let's move away from the mandated face coverings. Ali Filatova, a parent of 2 at Cabrillo, and she said families have been going to Kenny's across the street from Cabrillo for a long time without masks. They go to grocery stores without masks. All over Pacifica, they're without masks, and the ability to see faces is important to development. Troy Walker is a parent of 2 at Ortega and was a member of the Return to School Task Force. He wants to allow the smiles to shine in school, not just at recess. But he sent more than one email in favor of moving away from the mandated face coverings. And Marissa George at an Ocean Shore parent said adults can go to restaurants, bars, and the Super Bowl. It's important to see one's face, lift the mask mandate as the state has permitted in mid-March. And then the next 3 are parents that said, whoa, slow down, and very, very politely. So Denise Winowski is the parent of a 3rd grader at Ocean Shore. She's a frontline healthcare worker who works with immunocompromised children, and she has seen children struggle with COVID and the unknown long-term effects. And so students are at school, students are sitting within a foot of each other for hours, would like to see a more conservative approach to lifting the indoor mandate, and would we consider waiting until a week after our spring break? Rose Ju said her children will continue to wear masks regardless of the mandate, but is there a plan to roll this out slowly so that folks can communicate the decision to wear masks or not wear masks is a personal or family decision, and that needs to be respected? And I think whichever way we go, we have to make sure that that as we go toward not wearing masks, everybody has the right to wear masks. We're not taking the right to wear masks away from everyone, but when you make it a choice, there should be no shame in not masking or masking, right? And I think that's one of the things that I've heard from educators in terms of their concern is that people will feel pressured or that there could be teasing. I know I've also heard that same concern from parents. So Ms. Ju said, need to communicate that it's a personal or a family decision, and that needs to be respected. And then finally, the 3rd person was Gina Smith and from Ocean Shore. And she would like to ask the district to consider somewhat conservative timeline for transition to non-mandated indoor masking. Really, what would be the downside of waiting is number 1, additional time for teachers, staff, and students to be vaccinated. My guess is there will be families who now decide to get vaccinated since masks indoors will be optional. So giving families time. Will be upfront is that all of our staff that's interested in being vaccinated has been vaccinated. Number 2, preparation for teachers, staff, students, and parents, especially of the younger grade. The discussions around transitioning and respecting one another's personal choice to mask or not mask is just a huge shift, and not all students are excited. Some will be anxious and also fearful of mask shaming. So what we spoke about before. And then schools have really just started to hit their stride after 2 very stressful and chaotic trimesters. Routines are finally solidified, and most teachers and staff, I feel like they are finally getting to focus on instruction, and we'd like to do everything we can to help keep that focus. To offset the disruption that would be caused by this transition, and think a little bit more time could prepare to do that. So we shared both of those so that we could balance those. We have certainly heard from lots of parents, but I feel like if we think about from staff members, is overall the majority for staff is we will do what the district decides. Like I said, I was surprised that more felt like it was time to move in that direction. But I will also say that from staff's perspective is they are very, very tired of all of the things that have to do with COVID, and they just don't want to fight that battle. They're just exhausted on that end. But they, the little ones, or the teachers of the little ones, are interested in removing the masks and starting to see the faces. So.
Okay, I'm gonna call on the trustees. Let's start with Trustee Patel.
Thanks. And I really appreciated hearing all of the perspectives and views. I think, regardless of what this board decides, I think the point that was made is really important around maintaining, reinforcing, and respecting the decisions of families. And if students choose to wear a mask and do so for any reason, I think it would be a great idea to make sure there is communication that goes out to teachers to support students in maintaining a safe environment, so that there isn't any, teasing or anything like that. So I think that's incredibly important, especially I'm in a country right now with no mask mandate, and because I have an unvaccinated toddler at home, I continue to wear an N95 mask in every situation. I'm often the only one wearing an N95 mask, but everyone around me respects that decision, and things move forward just fine. And I think so that's kind of my overarching piece. And I think where I'm thinking about is, firstly, I'm not an epidemiologist nor a public health expert. And so I really do rely on the county's guidance of what is safe to do when. And, as Heather mentioned, masks are strongly recommended, but they are indicating, based on the research that they have and the information that they have, that it is acceptable for people to not wear masks, although it is strongly recommended. It's hard for me to justify a response other than that, but then adding on that everybody should be able to make their own decisions and be as conservative as they want to with mask wearing, like I am, where in my going abouts. So I just wanted to say that my comments come from a place of not having any additional information beyond what the county provides, and therefore I find it difficult to make a calculated decision other than what the county suggests. And then I also wanted to acknowledge the incredible efforts around maintaining education with masks that teachers and students have done, including, using voice amplifiers and, finding creative ways to, hear students and what have you. And I think I just wanted to acknowledge that I know that took a lot of work from staff and teachers and students alike. So just calling that out. Those are all my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go with Trustee Burkini.
Well, I just have one question first for my comments is, will there be any warning if on the pool testing, if the state decides to take that back?
I would say yes. But let me just describe to you what happened with curative testing. So curative testing is what we did last year, where all staff, actually not even all staff, it was voluntary, but staff were tested. It was PCR testing, and then all of a sudden in mid-May that went away, because it was billed through the insurance, and for whatever reason that expired. California has done very well, and one of the reasons that they have done is they have invested in testing for the schools. The example being that of the students in the country, California has 12% of all the students in the whole United States, and only 1% of any of the school closures happened in California. So a huge part of that has to do with California's layers of safety, but testing was huge on that. And I think we all know that all we have to do is not all we have to do, but, getting to the end of this school year is just, as Needy said, a Herculean effort of all of the staff to keep us in that category. So I don't expect that it's going to go away, and I don't expect that that it would just disappear. but we did have that experience with Curative when they changed the law around billing.
Okay. Well, I find myself in, again, a really hard position. But the one thing that's I feel a little different is that we actually have the government recommending a pathway forward, whereas 2 years ago we were all just sort of left on our own to figure it out. I do have some concerns about, pressure on kids with this strongly recommendation from the California Department of Public Health, and that we're going to really have to kind of depend on our teachers and principals to help make it, depending on how our vote goes, smooth transition. But at this point, I want to lean on the California Department of Public Health and their recommendation. So that's where I'm at.
Trustee Villalobos?
I'm just wondering, Dr. Olson, if you can take me to Monday, March 14th, walking into Ortega School, and what does that look like if we follow the California Department of Public Health?
So Ortega School's an interesting one to choose because I think we've heard from a fair number of Ortega parents around not wearing masks. I think, depending on the decision of the board, we would get communication out as soon as possible. My preference is to make sure that staff gets the information. The involvement in the survey led me to believe that they are knowledgeable about what's going on, so it wouldn't be a surprise to staff. And just kind of clearly spelling out, okay, staff, this is, as of Monday, masks are strongly recommended. We strongly recommend you as staff members wear masks. We have done a little bit of a check-in with the two presidents to make sure that our staff feel like they have enough either KN95 or N95 masks. So making sure that the employee feels safe and needs are met, but then that other piece around we're moving toward a strongly recommended. And so you may have students that either choose to wear masks or choose not to wear masks. And as the public education forum, we need to make sure that people feel confident that their choice is going to be respected. And, at different places that we've all had, we end up being that one person with the mask on in a huge crowd, and we recognize what that is like. I think the opposite will be true of our schools. I think most people will wear masks. And so when people, staff or students, choose not to, that's where we also have to acknowledge that. And one of the things that if we as a district decide is that it cannot be different for Mrs. Jones's room than Mrs. Smith's room. Like, all students have to have access to either masks or not masks. And just like everything else in the pandemic, we want to make sure that people wouldn't feel like they were being pressured one way or the other. And I've seen different things in the national headlines around, a teacher was just doing it out of, this is not our teachers, this did not happen at our school district, but someone saying, my father is at home sick and it would really help me if all of you wore a mask. And people can certainly share their circumstance, but a staff member or a family member can't shame someone else into doing that. So we'd have to work on that language. One of the decisions the board may want to take is let's wait one more week so that people felt like they had time to have those conversations. I do know that what I've heard from upper grade teachers of upper grades is that they've been talking about it for a while. People are eager to have those masks off. And I think in the places probably where we'd most likely see the most of the masks, highest percentage of masks coming off would likely be 6th through 8th grade. If you think about an 8th grader, they were in the pandemic in 6th grade. And so, have they seen each other's faces? Maybe, maybe not. More and more people are taking the masks off outside. So having the mask on all day is a really unusual situation. So we'd communicate with staff, we'd communicate with parents tomorrow. We could start on Monday because I think everybody's been watching this go for 2 weeks, or we could delay it for a week if that would make people feel more comfortable.
That is one of my concerns, is just being thrust into this all of a sudden. My other concern is, I just wanted to make a comment. Being here in Pacifica, I go to the grocery store, Panda Express, the pet food store, and the majority of people, even though, you're allowed to not have your mask on, I would say like 80% of our community is still masking up, even though they don't need to. And so that's one of the factors that would make me lean to following the Department of Public Health. But there's a part of me that is just wondering, when all this takes place on Monday with the schools that are going to go ahead and dive in, are the cases going to go up the following week or the following week? And so I kind of don't want our students or our staff to be an experiment to see if, let's see if it works. Let's see if they'll be okay. And so there's a part of me that's just wondering about that. So I would feel comfortable waiting a week or two until we have more language set out, about what you do when you see somebody not wearing a mask, the bullying that might happen. And quite frankly, I just want to see how these other schools around us do before we put our communities into that arena.
Thank you, Trustee Villalobos. Trustee Burdell.
Okay. Been thinking about this obviously for quite a few days. It's a hard one. My first reaction was to wait till spring break plus 1 week because of the surge in January that we all saw. But our spring break is so late, you're talking another month. And like Trustee Villalobos said, in Pacifica, we do have a high rate of people wearing masks, even when they're optional. We've had a high rate of vaccination. Just San Mateo County as a whole has been wonderful with that, following the guidance. I guess I would lean towards strongly recommended, but I think the idea of maybe adding a week or so to kind of see what happens, a spring break plus a week, I realize my thinking that's too far for everybody. But maybe Monday's a little too soon, so maybe some compromise in between. I would really like to see the at-home tests for the spring break before the kids come back from spring break. If we can find a way to get all those tests sent home, because that's where the surge would happen. I'm afraid, if it does, is when everyone's out traveling again. I have talked to a lot of teachers that have been working with students on respecting each other's decisions. And I know it's a hot topic, but I do think, we also live in a wonderful community that's handled this, I think, very well. The whole town of Pacifica and the county of San Mateo. So I guess in the end, like I said, my first gut is spring break plus a week, but that's a really long time. So I guess I would go with the strongly recommended, but maybe add a week in there or so to get things settled, and for everyone to get the word out and to let the kids know.
Just to clarify around the take-home tests is I said that they were for all family members. They're actually, every student will have a take-home test that will have 2 tests, and every staff member will have a take-home test that has 2 tests. It would be great if they gave it before they came back, but we're also going to find ourselves that one will want to use those take-home tests if they're symptomatic, right? We've all done lots and lots of testing around asymptomatic pieces, and I think less of that is going to happen, but people will have access to that. And I just wanted to clarify that I may have misspoken when I said all family members. Every student will have 2 tests, and every staff member will have 2 tests. So.
And the government, as of yesterday, I believe, is sending out 4 more tests to every address. Second wave of those. If people put in the request now, they might get them before spring break.
Trustee Doggett, your turn.
Yeah. So this conversation is reminiscent of when the pandemic first started, and we were figuring out whether we were going to close schools and how long we were going to close schools. And I remember saying that none of us signed up for these jobs to make life or death decisions. It's, this is not what I signed up for. And part of our reasoning behind closing school was thinking about the entire community, not just the people who come to school every day, our staff, our teachers, our students, but their families. Greater Pacifica, the young woman who spoke earlier about her toddler. And for me, I can't see us just saying, I understand the recommendation is we highly recommend mask indoors, but if we don't have some kind of rollout to that point, are we unnecessarily risking our community? And that's not just our students, it's not just our teachers and our staff, but our community is at risk because we have almost 3,000 students, and they all have families. And it's every time we make a decision around COVID, we can't just think of the immediate impact on us personally, but we have to think about our community impact. And right now, the masks have protected us. I think that we should, still be conservative in what we decide to do, because that has really made our district, we've done fairly well compared to some other districts as far as COVID, because we've been conservative in our decision making. And I think that we should, I'm actually okay with the spring break plus a week, because again, the spikes happen after the breaks. They happen every time. Thanksgiving, Christmas, there's always a COVID spike. And although it's wonderful that vaccinations are very high in our community, I think that's great. I think that's great that most people wear a mask. I really think that it's a beautiful thing that people wear masks and consider how wearing a mask impacts other people. Like, I'm wearing a mask not because I have COVID, but because if I did and I didn't know it, then I'm protecting my neighbors around me. And I think that we should continue to protect our community by just saying, okay, this is the recommendation. Let's roll it out slowly. Let's, especially with spring break coming up, let's see what happens after spring break. And, by the end of the year, let's see how it goes. That's my personal opinion. I think it's too soon to give the option because, again, it's not just our students, our teachers, and our staff. It's their families. And some people are immune compromised. And we have a lot of students. We are putting other people at risk if we just say, okay, well, it's highly recommended. But we know that somebody's going to come in without a mask. And it's too risky to me right now. So I would prefer that we go conservatively and say spring break, week after spring break, because that gives us a chance to look at the numbers. If the numbers look great, and they might, which would be wonderful because we all have pandemic fatigue. I know I do. It would be great to be able to come back and see that the numbers are low and that we're in a pretty good position to go ahead and say, yes, we highly recommend that you wear a mask at school, but it's not mandated. So So I don't know how we want to go on this. That's maybe we take a, I don't know, how are other trustees feeling about, go ahead, Heather.
So it sounds like that there is interest in following the guidance, but maybe not right away, that people would be okay with a little bit of a delay in that so that we could get things in order and make sure that people feel comfortable. Anything that we do outside of just straight on following the guidance, we do have to take a official board action on. And so someone would make a motion. And so some things that I just want to put out there in terms of, so a short explanation about why masks are still needed at this time. And I heard from multiples is that, that while straight path to the guidance is one way to go about it, that there is concern that we're ready to do that and that the communication aspects are in place and that teachers and schools have had the opportunity to have discussions with students around making that personal choice, while still highly recommending and strongly recommending that people wear masks. So that's why we could require them, is that we would just say that we're not quite ready on that end, and that the best interest is in making sure that in a rollout that it went smoothly. The last thing we'd want to do is go follow that guidance and either have a spike, or even worse is that, a spike would be bad, but even worse would be that people had great anxiety about returning to school, whether with a mask or without a mask. And what are my friends going to think? Are they going to wear masks? And at each of those grade level spans, there are conversations that teachers have in the most appropriate way. We could look to some of our caring school communities around personal choice lessons and make sure that that support was in place. And then the other piece is, as a educational agency, we do have the authority to make the decisions on local guidance for masking, and so that's well within our authority. We would have to say that as a part of this, and then we would just have to pick a date. When's the off ramp? Is it 2 weeks? Is it 4 weeks? Is it 6 weeks? It's really 6. I think May 1st is about.
Sorry, could you say that again?
Sorry, Siri. I think May 1st is 6 weeks away, and then there's to the end of school. So I think we ought to set a date in terms of the off-ramp part.
When is our next board meeting again?
Our next board meeting is about a month from now, April. I'll look it up.
The 30th of March.
Oh, March 30th. That's right, March 30th. Do you want to consider looking at targeting the week after March 30th?
Well, I was actually going to go the other way. I was wondering if we should do 2 weeks out, which is the 23rd, but then that would give us 1 week of this happening in the schools to get a report back on the 30th. So we could reverse course if we needed to, but maybe that's too soon too.
Yeah, I do think whatever we do, it's not going to be zigzaggy, right? Like, I think that as we know about COVID, there's few situations where it's a direct result of transmissions. We have had, even with all of the number of cases that we've had a really minimal amount of transmission that's been happening in school. So your suggestion is that we start on the 23rd. So number one, do we start on a Monday or a Wednesday?
I was thinking of Monday, the 28th.
Okay.
I agree with the rollout and making sure we're completely prepared with notifications to the whole community. there's only a certain amount of community members that are watching this meeting right now. And so we want to make sure everybody knows the information. Also, it'll be 2 full weeks that other schools have followed the guidance. So we could look at the other data of those schools to see if there's been spikes or if it's working out. I mean, just to see what the data is on it. That would be okay with me, is like, you know, a couple weeks to see how everything's going and allow everybody in the office to get ready to roll it out.
That seems like a reasonable one. Needy, we can't see your head bob up and down, so or back and forth. So would you like to weigh in at this point?
Yeah, I think the 28th, I mean, I'm not looking at a calendar right now, but I would certainly be supportive of either the Monday or the Wednesday, but whichever is logistically more feasible.
Perfect. Other trustees?
Oh, 1 more week. I'd rather be very conservative. I like to get, you know, an opportunity to see what's happening with when are the spring breaks of the other schools, because they'll be out.
So for those that didn't take a February break, many of them are out the last week in March. So they will be coming back just at that time. So if we said ours was on the 1st or the following week, that would be the same time other school districts would be coming back.
Mm-hmm. And that would be when the potential COVID spikes would start showing up.
In the other districts, possibly, yes.
Yeah. Like I said, I think that we should proceed with caution, because even though the numbers look good and it's highly recommended mask now, one of the things that has helped us is that we stayed pretty, you know, conservative in terms of rolling out things. So maybe 1 more week instead of just 2 weeks, give it 3. And those other districts that are coming back from spring break, we can really have some better data to evaluate with. Because if they are just going on spring break on the 28th of March, which is the last week of March, those spikes really don't start showing up till the 4th, you know, that week of the 4th. And that's what happened. I mean, it happened at Thanksgiving, it happened at Christmas. I'm just wanting to make sure that we are moving in such a way that we're not putting our community at risk.
Yep, and I don't disagree with you. I mean, we actually did very well after the February break. So really, after the winter break was Omicron. Like that was what kind of took off. So what you're saying is, what if we waited until April 4th? So it's 3 weeks away from, actually, it's not quite 3 weeks. It's a little bit more for us than 3 weeks, but it would be, and then there would be 3 weeks before we went on spring break. So we'd have the opportunity to test something.
Yep.
How do the other trustees feel about that?
I have a little concern that it's gonna, you know, we'll start to get the opposite pushback, that the masks are off everywhere else. Why are we not doing it in the schools? And I mean, now clearly we've been dealing with this for 2 years, so we can vet that. But I don't know. I feel like if we push too far, it starts to become a problem in the other direction. But I understand. I mean, it's just complicated. It's hard.
It is. Laverne, you're nodding your head.
Yeah, because it is a difficult decision. You know, there's a lot of different aspects, like we're not doctors, you know, we're not community health professionals. But I do know one thing is that the kids are back into a nice groove of seeing their own teacher instead of a substitute, or, just getting back into the classroom. So I feel like that's just happened. And so I think we also need to be careful about changing things up for them again. And, what if a teacher does get COVID? They're out for another 5 days and that whole class is going to be affected. So, I'm still okay with the 28th. And taking it a little conservatively just because I want to see what happens in other districts. The statistics that you showed us of our staff, it's pretty clear. All of us just want to get past this and take off our masks. But, we're so close to the end of school year. I think we need to be safe. I don't think we need to rush into it. And, do we have enough substitutes just in case if there is a spike, in the conversations that the teachers might have. So, I'm still okay with the 28th or around there.
You're on mute, Heather, if you were talking. You're on mute, Heather.
Elizabeth?
I'm okay with the 28th. I think the other districts, even though they're not on spring break yet, will know whether the optional mask caused a spike by that point. I think getting past 2 or 3 weeks, although in my perfect world, I'd probably wait, but that's probably pushing it too far. I think we'd have too much pushback, and I don't want the teachers to be put in any position where they're having to monitor and be mask police again.
Yeah, that very strongly came from staff. Is they're just tired of all of that and fighting that aspect. So
I think that our teachers will still wear their masks. I think a majority of the students will still wear their masks. I don't want the teachers to have to, are you wearing a mask? Are you not? Why are you not? I just don't want to put that on any of our staff.
Good. So just bringing us together to get to a decision, as I think that what I'm hearing from at least 3 of you is that the 28th would be okay. I've got Needy and Kai that it's hard for me just with Needy because I can't see her, but with Kai, would you be okay if we made our decision around the 28th, Kai? It's not what you wanted, but.
This one, I just want to make sure that we're protecting not just the immediate people that we are here to vote for, but the community as well. And I think the 28th is just a little too soon. It just is to me. It's we can't. None of us can predict what's going to happen, and this is something that still it's a virus, and we have vaccines, but people are still dying of this. And so when I think about making life or death decisions, I'm still going to be on the side of let's be very, very cautious. And I think the 28th is too soon. And, honestly, I'm disappointed that we are even making this decision because it shouldn't come down to us, but too soon. 28th, too soon for me.
Okay. Needy?
I would be in favor of the 28th.
You're on mute again, Heather.
I'm slow. My things are not working well. Linda, was that a hand raising question?
No, I was just going to go ahead and make a motion if we were ready.
Perfect. I want to just make sure that people are clear on what the actions are, which is we'll explain we're not ready to make that mask jump right now. We want to have time to talk to students and staff and parents so that everyone clearly has the information around strongly recommended masks. And the reason why it's in the best interest is that we're being conservative about the following the guidance, but we feel like we can get there with the right amount of time. and that it is within the jurisdiction of the school district. And so from now until Monday, March 28th, masks will be required. There are just a few students that do not wear masks, but that masks would be required. But otherwise, they would be strongly, strongly recommended for both students and staff. And then so on the 28th, we would start that. We do have another meeting on the 30th. I don't think we should consider it unless things are disastrous. I don't think we should reconsider it on the 30th. You obviously have to give something some period of time to look at how that's playing out. So we can give a quick update, but we should not be reconsidering that decision when we meet again on the 30th. So it looked like Linda might be ready to make a motion on that one.
Yes, so I was going to make a motion that we follow the California Department of Health guidelines and implement it starting March 28th to give the teachers and principals time to roll out what they need to do.
And a second?
I'll second.
From, she beat you, Laverne, from London, she beat you.
Sorry, I can't see anyone.
Barbara, can you take the roll call vote, please?
Yes. Trustee Burdall,
Yes.
Trustee Burkini,
Yes.
Trustee Doggett,
No.
Trustee Patel,
Yes.
Trustee Villalobos.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-1. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think we moved up the lottery item to after this item.
We did.
So 10M lottery update, John Bartfield.
Good evening, Board of Trustees. I am presenting tonight on an update on the results of our recent lottery in regards to our enrollment. So before we talk about the results, just a real brief history. We are, of course, an open enrollment district, meaning that any student residing within our boundaries can apply to any school within the district. Historically, back in 1969, the district consisted of 15 schools and we had 10,000 students at that time. Enrollment was declining and the district engaged the community to determine how to address that and reconfigure the schools. The results of that process produced what we have now, which is our two pathways, the single school pathway, kindergarten through 8th grade model, and then our dual school pathway, where students attend kindergarten through 5th grade and then move to middle school for 6th through 8th grade. And our open enrollment supports the family's ability to choose either model without the school boundary issue. Next slide. So about our enrollment process. So throughout the school year, new student residents who are enrolled are assigned to the school that has a space at their grade level. And if there's not space at the grade level of the desired school, students are placed on a wait list. And in preparation for upcoming school years, incoming kindergarten students, transition kindergarten students, as well as 6th grade students who are wanting to possibly have a different placement from the school that they would have been assigned to. Those placements and wait lists are determined through the lottery process. So per board policy, our priority order for waitlist placement is here. So first, students who may be retained or accelerated grade level at their given school. Second, students of newly hired district employees. Those employees need to be working at least 0.75 FTE. third siblings of students who are currently enrolled, the sibling priority, and then students who are residents of the district without siblings. That last bullet is actually a typo that we thought we removed, but it looks like it's still in this version. So that is no longer a factor on the waitlist placement, students residing out of district. So our enrollment dates, and these are in regard to the lottery process for 2022-2023 school year. You can see for kindergarten and TK, we opened enrollment in October of 2021. The sibling and priority enrollment period closed February 1st, 2022. And our new kindergarten and TK enrollment closed February 16th, 2022. And for the fifth through students transitioning from 5th to 6th grade, we were accepting those transfer requests from the months of November through January. And we held our lottery for kindergarten, TK, and sixth grade on February 18th. So in looking at our results, first we have transitional kindergarten lottery results, and we have our number registered there, 82. We had an uptick in our enrollment. The dates were moved for eligibility for TK for next year from December to February. So we had an uptick in that enrollment. You can see the number of priority placements. So 25 out of that. So those are students who would have met one of those criteria on one of that previous slide. And the actual openings is based on our staffing levels. So with the way these slides are set up is the actual openings plus the priority placements would equal those staffing levels. So you can see with TK, our 77% of students got their first choice, 23% got their second choice. We're in the process right now because we have likely to open a fourth TK classroom. So we're in that process, and that very well might clear that.
If we opened a fourth TK class, it would be at Ortega. But just know that TK and kindergarten have the most variable enrollment always. They people sign up and they aren't there. And so we're going to be a little bit conservative on that. But if we open a fourth one, it will be at Ortega.
Here are our kindergarten lottery results. And you can see that we had more students with second, third, fourth, and fifth choices. So, but 87.4% did receive their first choice. Next slide. And then sixth grade, we just had a total of 33 students. Yes, they were registered, and that's really 33 students who expressed an interest to go to a different school than they would have been assigned based on their pathway. That goes both ways, obviously. So 4 of those were priority placements, and we were obviously able to give all of our students 100% their first choice with that. Our next steps are, well, we already did that next step, which is we activated the 2022-2023 waitlist. It became active on March 7th. So that's all been posted on our website, and we also, of course, continue to enroll students for the current school year as well. So we can't lose sight of that. So those are our lottery results. What questions do you have?
I'll just go around. Trustee Burkini, since I see you first.
No questions. Thank you.
Trustee Bradal.
I know there's always, just over the years, there's always a lot of movement on the wait list. And I know it's very distressing for the parents at this point, but there really is a lot of movement. So last year, do you know how many people ended up getting their first choice by the time school started?
I don't have that number handy.
Since he was new, he doesn't know necessarily, and I wouldn't be able to say off the top of my head. But where I will say is that many people were moved off the wait list because we had more staff than we would typically for the number of students that we did. We had a few more staff openings also remember that about 250 fewer students came to school district-wide, not just in kindergarten. And so almost everyone got their first choice. But we will check those numbers for you.
Just looking past the past 25 years, I know that it looks like a long waiting list now, and usually by September, it's not that long. It's just a handful.
Trustee Villalobos.
I just have a question is, when can we start looking at a new procedure for the lottery and updating it?
So we have looked at 2 different products, and I would love to say we just need this one product, but really it comes down to changing our student information system. Right now we use Synergy. It is, used by every staff, every school office, every principal, every teacher. It will take us 18 months to move away from that, and then we could look at doing an online lottery. But in the products that we looked at, it all comes back to that student information system. So that's the big thing that needs to happen before we can go online.
Trustee Patel. Did you hear me, Trustee Patel? Do you have any questions, comments?
No questions for me. Thank you.
Okay. From me, I just want to say to the parents out there who may not have gotten your first choice, as a new parent to Pacifica in 2014 or 2015, something like that, when I selected the schools, I went online like probably all the parents who moved in and just picked the school that seemed to have the highest rating. We did not get our first choice, but we got the best choice. Sunset Ridge is a wonderful school, as are all of the schools in our school district. Teacher, staff, the kids are great. So even if you don't get your first choice, you may end up like we did, really loving the school that you're at. So I just hope that parents who might feel like, I didn't get my first choice, to give the school, if that's where your child ends up, because it could change between now and September. But if that is the school that your child ends up at, please give it a chance. You might end up loving it. We gave up our lottery slot after the first year, and that happens a lot too. So I just wanted to say that this is not a bad thing. Sometimes it can be the best thing for your kid.
Thank you for that message. That's very important.
Yeah. Okay, this is not an action item, right? This is purely informational. Okay, let me get back to.
I was just going to say just one more comment, that parents that think the lottery is new, my daughter's turning 30 this year. And I remember very well the lottery, because there were 13 spots and she was the 13th one chosen. So it's been around a long time.
And we don't have any public comment on this. Just double checking before I move on.
It looks like there might be, I think, Heather, were you?
I'm looking right now. So I see them all as, unless O Farmer has one about the lottery. I think O Farmer was in there while we were talking about COVID. So I don't believe there's any public comment. Thank you, John. Nice job.
All right, so we're going back to 10E, resolution number 2022-03-09-A to lay off permanent classified employees. Dr. Torres.
Good evening, Board of Trustees. I have 3 resolutions to present tonight. The first one is We recommend that the Board of Trustees adopt Resolution 2022-0309A to lay off permanent classified employees as indicated in the resolution due to expiration of specially funded program and lack of funds. This resolution is being brought to the board at this time due to the provisions in Assembly Bill 438. The positions being laid off are that of the COVID-19 health assistants, as they were temporary in nature to support this school year 2021-2022 using specially funded programs. This resolution will affect 5 of our classified employees.
Right, do we have any questions? I will go around the room. Trustee Patel?
No questions.
Trustee Bradal?
No questions.
Trustee Villalobos?
No questions.
Trustee Burkini?
No questions.
I don't have any questions myself. Do I have a motion to adopt this resolution?
The motion that nobody wants to take because we are so incredibly grateful for the COVID health assistance in terms of we recognize that they helped us get to where we are right now. And it's very challenging to make that motion.
I'll motion to move this, but and we can look at it as positive that we're moving out of this, that we don't need COVID anymore.
I'll second.
Barbara, can you take the roll call vote, please?
Yes. Trustee Bradal?
Yes.
Trustee Burkini?
Yes.
Trustee Doggett?
Yes.
Trustee Patel?
Yes.
Trustee Villalobos?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Okay, that was 10E, 10F, resolution number 2022-03-09-B. Read notice of release of temporary certified employees. Dr. Torres, this is you again.
Yes. It is recommended that the Board of Trustees adopt Resolution 2022-0309B to notice of release of temporary certificated employees as indicated in the resolution due to Education Code Section 4494B, which provides that a governing board of a school district may notify temporary certificated employees of the decision to release the employee to such a position for the succeeding school year. Some background: due to decreasing enrollment and budgetary constraints, it is necessary to give notice of release to the indicated temporary certificated employees at this time per Education Code Section 4494B. Should certificated positions become available due to natural attrition such as retirement, resignation, etc., the temporary teacher's release will be notified of the opportunities to continue as an employee in the Pacifica School District. The Pacifica School District is an appreciation of the efforts and commitment each of our indicated temporary certificated employees have given to our students and community. This resolution affects 4 of our certificated employees.
Okay, do we have any questions regarding this resolution? I will go around the room. Trustee Villalobos, any questions?
No questions.
Trustee Burkini?
No questions.
Trustee Patel?
No questions.
Trustee Bradal?
No questions.
Do I have a motion to adopt this resolution? I will make a motion to adopt this resolution. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Barbara, can you take the roll call vote, please?
Yes, of course. Trustee Bradal?
Yes.
Trustee Burkini?
Yes.
Trustee Doggett?
Yes.
Trustee Patel?
Yes.
Trustee Villalobos?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
10G, resolution number 2022-03-09-C to eliminate and or reduce the number of certificated employees due to a reduction in particular kinds of services. Dr. Torres?
It is recommended that the Board of Trustees adopt Resolution 2022-0309C to reduce or discontinue particular kinds of services no later than the beginning of the next school year per Education Code Section 44955. The following particular kinds of services shall be reduced or eliminated no later than the beginning of the 2022-2023 school year. Teacher on special assignment, a 1.0 FTE at Sunset Ridge School. Background, due to decreasing enrollment and budgetary constraints, it is necessary to reduce or discontinue particular kinds of services no later than the beginning of the next school year per Education Code Section 44955. The Pacifica School District is an appreciation of the efforts, commitment, and contribution of our certificated employee in the stated position being reduced and will make every effort to support next steps for the certificated employee being affected by Resolution 2022-0309C. This resolution affects one of our certificated employees.
Okay, I will go around the room. Trustee Bradall. Any questions?
No questions.
Trustee Villalobos.
No questions.
Trustee Patel. Did we lose Trustee Patel?
Actually, she said she was just kicked off. She was just kicked off the line. So let me see if she wants to get back in, and you can keep asking.
She might have a time limit.
Oh, yeah.
Trustee Bocchini.
No questions.
I'm not sure what we do going forward.
I think I will take it as a sign. Please let the board and participants know that she was kicked off and she's going to go back to, so she's in London right now and she's there for a work trip. And so she's going to head off and see if she can catch a couple Z's before she goes to work. So,
okay.
So she will take that as a sign. And so we'll go now with 4 board members. We just have to make sure that we reflect in the minutes that she left at, / was kicked out at 9:08.
All right, 9:08, okay. All right, I have no questions. Do we have a motion to adopt this resolution?
I'll make a motion to adopt.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Barbara, can you take the roll call, please?
Yes. Trustee Bradall.
Yes.
Trustee Burkini.
Yes.
Trustee Doggett.
Yes.
Trustee Villalobos.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 10H, district proposal for CSEA negotiations. Dr. Torres.
It is recommended that the Board of Trustees adopt the initial proposal of the Pacifica School District for the 2022-2025 successor negotiations with the California School Employees Association and its Pacifica chapter number 128. This rationale is that the public notice provisions of the Educational Employment Relations Act requires the Pacifica School District to give public notice of their initial proposal for the 2022-2025 successor negotiations. The Pacifica School District initial proposal is attached to the agenda for review of the Board of Trustees. As you will see, we are proposing changes to Articles 1, 10, 14, 16, 18, and 27 with the right to make additional proposals at any time during the bargaining process, including but not limited to responses to proposals made by the California School Employees Association and its Pacifica chapter number 128. In addition, Pacifica School District intends to revise and remove language as necessary to reflect changes in the law and to eliminate ambiguity or antiquated language.
All right, do we have any questions? Trustee Villalobos.
No questions.
Trustee Bradall.
No questions.
Trustee Burkini.
No questions.
Okay, do we have a motion to adopt the district proposal for CSEA negotiations?
I'll make a motion to adopt the district proposal for CSEA negotiations.
Do we
I'll
have?
second.
Okay, great. Barbara, will you take the roll call vote, please?
Of course. Trustee Bradall.
Yes.
Trustee Burkini.
Yes.
Trustee Doggett.
Yes.
Trustee Patel is absent. Trustee Villalobos.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 10I, certification of second interim report. Ms. Peterson.
Thank you, Trustee Doggett. So will bring up the presentation, and what we have to present to you tonight is our second interim report. And you can go ahead and move forward, Will, the next two slides. This report represents where our budget is as of January 31st, and also projects the activity through the end of the year, and in addition, some multi-year projections. Now, we did present the first interim report in December, and I really have to say there hasn't been very much change since we presented that. Please go ahead. Just kind of want to give you this snapshot again of what the state COLA percentages are predicted to be. We presented it at first interim, and now we can show you that since Governor Newsom had his January proposal, you can see that the COLAs in the multi-year are projected to be higher. And then when we come to his May revision, those numbers could change again. And go ahead and go forward. We want to talk a little bit more about how school districts are funded, because Pacifica has historically been what's called LCFF funded. So the LCFF funding is really based on how many students you have, based on their grade levels and on some of the additional services that those students receive, called supplemental funds. And then community funded is what used to be called the old basic aid funding. And that's when school districts receive more than what is allocated in the state formula. And we do have a good picture coming up. San Mateo County is very unique in California because of the property taxes and so many community funded districts. And in recent years, we've seen a lot of what they call flipping back and forth between the LCFF funded and the community funded. Go ahead and move forward, because Dr. Olson found a really good picture that demonstrates how school districts are funded. So state aid is the first set of LCFF funding, and that's when the formula is how many students you have based on how much the state funding level is. And then there's also your component of property taxes. So you can see with state aid, the bucket is at a certain level. But then when you move over to community funded in the second picture, that school district gets more property taxes than what the state formula dictates. And so that's how you see the discrepancy in how some school districts get, $10,000 and others get much, much more. Go ahead and go forward. And the other thing I wanted to comment as talking is I really can't see your faces. So Dr. Olson or Trustee Doggett, if you see that someone has a question or you want to stop me at any time, please speak up. A lot of this is very similar to the first interim. So I'll just keep going until someone stops me. So Pacifica School District is funded in three ways. So federal dollars, that's what you call Title I, Title II, Title III. Title I is for the low socioeconomically disadvantaged students. Title II is professional development, and Title III is your English learner students. You can see that it's not a lot of funding that we receive from the federal government for those students. And then IDEA is your individuals with disabilities, your special ed funding, $596,000. This is all in the first column. So federal funds is $772,000. It's less than $1 million out of our $35 million bucket. It is a small percentage of our funding. And then the state local control funding is the bulk of Pacifica School District's funding. And some of these terms you might not be familiar with. The base grant is that every student gets a certain amount of funds based on their grade level. And then supplemental funds is certain students receive more funds based on if they're low income, English, or foster youth or homeless. And then concentration is when you have a higher distribution of those students. So you can see the breakdown at the bottom. The base grant's 25 million, supplementals about 1.2 million, and then Pacifica does not qualify for the concentration funds. And then the last category is our local funds. We're very fortunate to our community. It's really basically the parcel tax and the Measure O bond are our local funds. So go ahead and move forward. So this is a chart that School Services puts together, and we just pulled San Mateo County, and you can see that Pacifica is still at the bottom funding-wise. The top school district gets 35,000 and Pacifica is 11,000. Go ahead and move forward. So here you can just see the next two slides are the same as first interim. It's a snapshot of our revenues. You can see the LCFF property tax is 69% is the bulk of our revenues. Federal and other state and other sources are very low. And then go ahead and move to expenditures. And out of our budget, 76% is employee compensation. And this pie graph breaks it out between certificated, which is the teaching staff, classified administrators, and then the supplies for the students and other services. Go ahead and move forward. So here's the actual summary of our second interim. The documents are all attached, but this compares the first interim report to the second interim report. And I'm not going to spend much time on this page because there really wasn't much difference between first interim and second interim. If you go ahead and move forward, Will, you can see this breaks it down for you. Where were the differences? So federal revenue, we received some more ESSER funds. A lot of the federal funds, we don't know the exact amounts until the distributions are made. Other state revenue, we were made aware of how much the educator effectiveness grant was and the expanded learning opportunity. And then those are really the major differences from first interim in the revenue category. If you go forward, and then second interim really gives us a better idea of our actual staffing. And so the salaries were all updated along with the benefits based on the actual staffing we had as of January. One category that I know we're going to continue to talk about is services, other operating. We did have some increases because, as you know, we've increased our costs with grounds. We had some prior year loan costs that were booked this year, and we've had increases in our routine maintenance account and special education account. So one of the things we do want to talk to the board at a future board meeting is the ongoing costs of facilities. There are quite a bit of increases from first interim to second interim in that category. And go ahead and go forward. So here's a snapshot of our other funds. I don't know that I need to go over this because it's exactly the same as first interim, but I'm happy if anybody wants to ask any questions about this chart. We can always talk about it, but it really just shows the different funds, how much money is in each fund, and an explanation of what the type of fund is. So you can go ahead and go forward. Here's a very summarized multi-year for Pacifica School District. The current year, you can see the beginning balance, the revenues, and then the ending balance. And we're very fortunate this year because we did flip to community funded. So our ending fund balance is 5.4 million. Now this is the combined general fund. So that does include some of the ESSER funds and some of the restricted funds that we are receiving this year and not spending until next year. So 21-22 has a higher ending fund balance, but then in 22-23, we go back into deficit spending because we would flip back to LCFF funded. And then in 23-24, it really is hard to determine where we will be at that time, but our multi-year that we're submitting to the county reflects that we maintain LCFF funding, that we don't flip back to basic aid. So our ending fund balance does decline over the years. Of course, that could all change when the governor gives his May revision and also when we find out what our status would be in the third year. So go ahead and move forward. This is really, again, the same as first interim. We wanted you to see a 2-year summary of the COVID funds received and expended. And you can see we received well over $4 million in one-time funds these past 2 years. And go ahead and go forward. There's some summary of how the funds were spent. And it's pretty much the same. We spent 1.4 million focusing on employee safety, distance learning, technology, food service, learning hubs, and compensation for our employees. And then in year 2, we shifted to getting back to in-person instruction, supporting our students' needs in the classroom, expanding learning, the counselors, which you've heard a lot about, the para support, COVID health assistance, additional employee compensation, and then outdoor learning spaces. And then moving forward, this is really what school services presents as recommended reserve levels. And for elementary, it's the average is about 22%. This is 2 years ago. Their data is usually a couple of years old. They also recommend that you maintain 17% or 2 months of payroll. And so for Pacifica, that would be about just under 13%. And in this year, we're very fortunate our reserve is higher, but then it does dip down in the coming years. So go ahead and go forward. So again, we're certifying our budget as positive because we do have a positive ending fund balance in the current year and 2 fiscal years going out. And what's next? Well, okay, so next steps. We're going to continue to work on our enrollment and staffing so we can predict for 22-23. We're going to have our public hearing for our LCAP and our budget in May, and then we will be adopting the LCAP and the budget in June. And so just a short other district considerations. I think we have the parcel tax on here, which was also in the parcel tax report, but just kind of to highlight again, we sent 2 grade levels to outdoor education, and the parcel tax does have a positive ending fund balance in this current year. So I believe that's it. I did go very quickly, so I'm happy to take time now and answer any questions or comments that the trustees may have.
I'm going to go around. Since Trustee Burkini, you're first up on my screen, I'm going to start with you.
No questions. Thank you.
Trustee Villalobos.
I didn't hear or didn't see the ending balance for the ESSER funds. Do we still have COVID money left?
Yeah, so I don't think that it have the ESSER funds on there. ESSER 1 is completely expended. ESSER 2, we still do have some funds, and I can get that exact figure for you. And then ESSER 3, we have not yet received and not yet spent any of those funds. So those are federal funds, and I can bring you an update on those funds. There's also the GEARS funds where we have GEARS 1 that we've partially spent, and then GEARS 2, which is, gosh, what was the GEARS? I have to remember what that even stands for, but that was special education COVID funding, and we have not spent those funds either. So out of the federal category, I can bring you an update on where we are with spending those funds. That's a good question.
And then also if there's any expiration dates or when we need to spend them by.
Oh yes, we'll definitely bring you the expiration dates as well.
And then my other question was about the fields. Where did we used to draw money to take care of the fields, or has the expense just grown over the years? I mean, 300,000 seems like a lot to me. Have we always spent that much money on the fields?
Yeah, when you're adding up the water and all of those costs, but we have been spending more on contracted services in these past couple of years. That's the one area that I think has really grown. We didn't used to contract out for services, and before COVID, the year before COVID, and then this year we've been contracting out with an outside agency to come in and help us catch up, especially with the tick abatement, because that became a strong concern for our district, and so we hired them initially to do tick abatement, and now they've been helping us catch up. So where did the money come from? There really hasn't been a dedicated source of funding for the fields other than 2 groundskeepers and their equipment and supplies. And so with the added pest control and tick abatement, there is a lack of a funding source. It's been coming out of the maintenance budget in addition to the plumbing and all of those other issues. And so what I plan to do is bring another presentation to the April board meeting to really go into the details of the facilities budget and the facilities funding and what we've been spending and what the needs are.
The cost of water went up a bit as well, right?
Thank you, Josie.
You're welcome.
Trustee Bordeaux, any questions?
I don't think it was on there, but the school lunches of what we were always in a running a deficit before, $40,000 or $60,000 a year, and now the state's been paying for them, but I don't think it covers everything. Have they said how long they're in the future? Are they going to continue that? Was that in the governor's budget, or is that something we're going to have to start picking up again soon?
It's in the governor's budget. I haven't heard that they're not paying for it. Have you, Dr. Olson? I haven't.
I have not. I actually think it's a great source of pride in California, and I expect not only, I think that it may actually become a federal.
Was it that they were paying for the food, but we're paying for the employees? Or I thought there was a gap there, but was covered.
Yeah, there was a gap before COVID. And even during COVID, we had almost a $600,000 gap. We actually utilized some of the COVID funding to cover half of that gap, and then the general fund. So there was a gap. And then with their new funding stream, there is no longer a gap. We project this year to have a break-even program if all goes well. And that we have a reduced staff load as well, because we did have some turnover before COVID and during COVID. But serving lunch to all students and getting reimbursed from the federal and state, it looks like we could be at a break even versus the losses that you've seen in prior years.
And we've never in history broken even?
Not since I've been here. It was at a big loss when I came to this district.
Okay, because I thought they were paying for the food maybe and not for the people power. So yeah, if that's covered, that's amazing. So hopefully,
there's a reimbursement rate that's supposed to cover everything.
Also during the pandemic, as we kept people people employed, more employees than we did the need for food, and so that's where that gap was.
But they were out there working when no one else was. They were out there in the parking lots passing out food when there was no one else out there.
They absolutely were.
It was amazing work. So.
Absolutely. Front line.
Okay, this is an action item. So do I have a motion to approve the certification of the 2021-2022 second interim report?
I'll motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Barbara, will you take the roll call vote, please?
Of course. Trustee Burdall?
Yes.
Trustee Burkini?
Yes.
Trustee Doggett?
Yes.
Trustee Villalobos?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0. Thank you.
If this group has the strength to make it to one more, it would be a great breaking point. How you doing? Can you make it one more?
Yeah, I was just getting ready to ask, do you all want to take a break now, or do you want to keep going for one more?
One more is fine.
One more
for me.
All right. 10J, authorization to enter into contract with outdoor improvements for 4 sites. This is Ms. Peterson again.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Doggett. So we did have another bid opening. We are, like you've heard in the public comment, we have a lot of projects going on. And so this project is for outdoor improvements. We combined them in the bid for a better pricing. The project includes Sunset Ridge, Ingrid B. Lacey, Cabrillo, and Ortega School. And it has to do with a much needed ADA improvements in the parking lots, concrete ramps, fencing, card-controlled motorized gates, et cetera. And so the bid opening was March 3rd. And you can see, well, you can't see, but I can tell you the bid results. There were 3 bidders. Dryco was $616,000. Treaty Construction was $898,000. And Silicon Valley Paving was just over $1 million. And so we are recommending Dryco Construction. They are a local company, and we have a good history working with them. And we are recommending to go with the lowest bidder tonight.
Okay, I'll go quickly around the room for questions. Trustee Villalobos?
No questions.
Trustee Bertal?
No questions.
Trustee Burkini?
No questions, but I'm glad we're getting this done. It's great.
Do I have a motion to authorize staff to enter into contract with the lowest possible bidder for the outdoor improvements at 4 sites?
I'll motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, Barbara, can you take the roll call vote, please?
Yes, of course. Trustee Burdell,
Yes.
Trustee Burkini,
Yes.
Trustee Doggett,
Yes.
Trustee Villalobos.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0. Thank you.
I guess we're gonna take 10 minutes, 5 minutes. What do we need?
Can you do it in 5 or do you want 10? 5. All right. John's got the timer. Hit it, John.
Hey.
You can take more time if you need it. Mr. Lucy,
Yes,
are you with us?
I'm with you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we will just, there's Laverne, perfect. Laverne and her cat are with us, or were with us. All right, we are ready for you, sir, with an iReady update.
Yes.
All right. Can I proceed?
You may, thank you.
All right, I'm going to share my screen here. So tonight I have the opportunity to present iReady assessment update, and this iReady assessment update is inclusive of both the fall and the winter administration of the diagnostics. So just to begin, at the beginning of the year, our academic focus was to know each student, meaning that we would assess all students and find out where they are in the core subject areas. And then we were going to take that data and collaboratively look at it closely and define what all students need, what some students need, and what individual students need. And then based off that analyzing and collaboration, we would be able to plan instruction, teaching structures, and also create support plans for those students who needed it. And the metric that this academic assessment is connected to is a metric for goal 2 in our LCAP, which is it's actually 2 separate metrics. It's one for math and one for ELA, but both of them were to reduce the percentage of students identified as at risk of not meeting math or grade level standards as indicated on the iReady assessments. So first we're going to start with reading, and the shot I have here is for the iReady diagnostic results in reading, and it compares the window 2, which would be the winter versus compared to the fall. So the assessment, the diagnostic assessment that was given at the beginning of the year. And the 2 areas that I want to direct you to is the areas that are encircled, and those are the areas that are red, representing the 2 grade levels below or 3 grade level placement. And those would be those students that would be at risk. And as you can see from this window, that at the beginning of the year, we had 26% of our students from 1st through 8th in that at-risk area. And by our window 2, that was reduced to 18%. Our desired outcome, and this was an outcome that was placed before we even had a baseline, which was at 26%. We wanted to get down to 15% or lower of at risk. So this is kind of another way of looking at that placement. And again, it compares the fall to the winter. You had in this green area, which would be the early on grade and on grade level or below, you had a 14-point change from fall to winter, positive. in this at-risk area or 2 grade levels below, or 2 grade levels or more below, you had a reduction, which you want to have, which is that minus 8% difference from fall to winter. And this one, there's a lot on this slide, but it breaks it down by grade levels, 1st through 8th, and these are the number of students that were part of this comparison. And again, you're looking at the greens wanting to grow bigger because those are the ones that are early on grade level. So grow from the fall to the winter. And as you can see, some of the things that kind of stand out here is the in 5th grade, there is a dramatic drop in those at-risk students from 32 to 21%. But all of them have this in those at-risk, in that at-risk area, and all of them have a gain in the mid to on grade level. One other thing I wanted to point out was in 3rd grade, we had really a small percentage of 14% who were 1 grade level below. And then this is for math. This is the same kind of slides, but on the math side. And again, we went from 26% of students at risk at the beginning of the year to 16% in this middle of this year. And so that is indicated there. And then again, we had the same desired outcome. We want to get to 15%, but we might have to rethink that desired outcome because we're pretty close to that already. So we might want to be more aggressive in thinking that we can lower that even further. And again, mathematics, and this is very dramatic, a 20% change from fall to winter, and then a drop of 10% from fall to winter in those at risk. So really good. It looked really good with mathematics. And again, we go to the grade levels. And like you said, you like to see those drops in the red for each of the grade levels, as they drop in. And then also in the greens, this 1st grade was a pretty dramatic jump from 13% to 40%. And also in 2nd grade and in 3rd grade. And then, but you had gains in all the grades. You had a positive change in all the grades in those areas. And then now I'm going to get into a discussion around typical growth and stretch growth. When we first had the first diagnostic, we weren't able to have a typical growth or stretch growth because you needed really two diagnostics to really see if you are moving towards your typical growth or stretch growth. Typical growth is defined, as it says there, is that average annual growth of students at this grade level and a baseline placement level. So this is the way they calculate this is that they think of the millions of people who've taken the iReady, and they decide on, or they calculate an average what should be a typical growth for a student depending on their grade and their baseline placement level. So if you look at these two students, Alex, his typical growth, his expected growth, you want 100% of your students to make this growth, is a 27 point difference between their baseline. And then for Bianca, it's a 25 because of where she is starting, and her baseline is at an early on grade level. A stretch growth is more of an ambitious but attainable level of annual growth, which puts below grade level students on the towards proficiency and on grade level path of achieve or maintain advanced proficiency levels. And so when we look at both of those as a group, we really, the way it's calculated, it takes the median student, which is if you have this amount of students in your class, right? you're looking at that median student that's in the middle. That's the middle student. And about half of your students are going to be higher than that median student. About half are going to be lower than the median students. You're expecting by mid-year to have your median student at 50%. That's the expectation, especially with typical growth. So for our reading, for the students in our reading, their typical and stretch growth, district-wide, we were at 73%, and we're expected at this time, at the time of the second diagnostic, we're expected to be at around 50%, or you want to be at least at around 50%. But below there, that's for typical growth. But below here is the distribution of that progress to annual typical growth. And remember, this has to do with annual growth. This is by the end of the school year. Where are these students at? We had 32% of our students who were below 19% progress towards typical growth. And then 6% from 20 to 39 and so on. And then you had 42% of the students in reading that have already met midway through the year, they've already met their typical growth. So as I was explaining this, or as this was explained to me, you usually get this kind of U-type thing, but it's good to see that we have already 42% of our students that have already met their typical growth. And then you take that same idea to the stretch growth, right? And in reading, we had 38% of our students that were at 19% progress towards their stretch growth. And that would be their end of the year stretch growth, right? And then again, you have this kind of U-shaped, and we did had 19% that have already met their stretch growth. That means they've met mid-year, they've already met their end of the year stretch growth. So a lot of what's been happening at the sites is they're looking at these students that are at 19% that you really want at a 50%. You want that student to be at 50% in both typical and their stretch growth. I mean, it'd be nice if they were at 50% at this point of the year. There was some good news here, but there was also some areas that we need to really kind of work with those particular students. And then how much growth was achieved by PSD students in reading? So at about 18 or 19 weeks into the school year, which is where we're at, I think we're at a little more now, but at the time when this was pulled up, it was around 18 and 19. We should be kind of at that 70%. Now, this chart is a little deceiving in that the data that we have here, which is the medium percent of typical growth achieved and the medium percent of stretch growth achieved, this data was more at about our 50%, a little bit over our 50% of when this data was taken. But this is based off at the 18th or 19th week, we should be at this area. So it'll be interesting when we actually do the spring diagnostic on this to see where these numbers are then and moving forward. And again, just to be clear, the orange is the typical growth and the blue, or whatever that color is, kind of bluish color, is the stretch growth achieved and by grade level. And then now we move over to math, and it's the same thing, 50%. We had 67%, which is good. We're beyond that 50% mark at halfway through the year. And again, we have our typical growth of 26%. These are students that we want to put some extra focus on as far as like finding out what they need to progress. And then we had our 35% that have already met that typical growth. And then the same thing here with the 32% for the stretch growth, and that's this ambitious goal for them. And then 12% that are have already met that in mathematics. And then again, we have the same chart, but for mathematics. And again, this is the median percent. That's the center student, the middle student, right? Again, this is at 18 or 19 weeks. There should be 60. You should be at 62%, and this is specific to math of your typical growth. And there's where our students lie per grade level. So I know that's a lot to throw at you, and I hope you were able to preview this before. But if you have any questions, I'd be more than willing to answer them.
I'm going to just go around the room quickly. Trustee Villalobos.
I don't really have any questions. I just see that we have some goal setting to do towards getting our students back up to where they need to be. And I'm just wondering how we're going to do that, or if there's a plan for the beginning of the year or a push for the end of the year. And what kind of time are they going to be missing from learning by doing testing till the end of the year?
Yeah, we have actually already started that as far as we've done that collaboration piece around the data. We also there's a number of our students that have this personalized instruction that's it's connected with iReady, and those personalized instructions, they take how they score on these assessments, and they basically set up a supportive program for these that is in addition to their in-person learning for some of these students. Now, the teachers have gone through, they've gone through a couple of professional developments about how to look at this data, and all that information I just shared with you was shared with them, but at a classroom level and at a student level. And they learned about stretch goals and typical growth and that type of thing. And so plans are already kind of in place, and a lot of interventions have been in place, but this is going to be an ongoing process. We're going to go through the same thing after the third, and after the third diagnostic, and then at the beginning of the next year, going through that practice. And it has really, which I think is a huge plus for our district, it has really brought a collaborative approach to how are we going to address student need within these two subject areas, reading and math. But also it has brought this idea of really making data-based decisions for instructional practices and for what type and what kinds of interventions need to be in place to support these students. So to answer your question, the process has already started, but this is going to be ongoing. We have iReady for 3 years. We've already committed to 3 years of iReady. So this is going to be happening, hopefully it's going to be happening for, throughout the end of this year, at the beginning of next year, and moving forward. It's going to be a constant process.
Thank you.
Trustee Bradal.
I was just wondering if their baseline, if they took into account the students being out for 2 years on distance learning, and I assume those baselines are probably before the pandemic, when they had in-person learning, and if they're ever good, if iReady is ever going to release the numbers of, we look so far behind, but we might be comparable to other districts. To the world right now. So
that was good. Sorry.
I was going to say is that we look at it with a critical lens. Honestly, I look at that and say, look at the progress that we made. And I did want to make a big shout out to all the folks at the school site. This was happening when in January, lots of kids were missing school, right? Lots of kids were missing school in December. So that progress is really I think, commendable. And I just want to give a shout out to all the staff that have been involved in that, because if you think of the challenges just in being back to school, so I don't, yes, we are behind, but when you look at it relative to others and you look at the progress that we're making some very nice progress on that end.
I feel like you got to take into account the world's behind right now, and and to see what they consider the bar, it was probably set before the pandemic. So
it
it's not that we don't have to make it back. We definitely have to make it back as soon as possible, but it's not just us, I guess, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, the iReady trainers and the people who that we talk to pretty regularly, because they've been part of our PD process as we move forward. We're all new to this year, having just started with iReady for this year. That baseline was not a shock to them. They have hundreds of districts that utilize their thing. So they weren't. So they definitely said there is more of a focus on this stretch goal piece, not this typical growth piece. We don't want to forget the typical growth. We want to make sure that if a student is not making typical growth, annual typical growth, then we need to have a study for those particular students. But they've been really kind of emphasizing the idea of the stretch goal, and he said more than in the past, more than pre-pandemic, because they know that there's so many students that have lost some. There's some that have not lost through the pandemic, but for the most part, there's a large number that have. So it's and I personally am really excited about the work that's been done this year. It's really exciting to see, administrators and teachers, and I'm getting questions constantly about, okay, how do I do this chart? How do I drill down to the students? It's really exciting to see that they're putting this focus on. And I know it's just on the academic part of it, but it's really they're putting a lot of efforts and time into it. I really commend them, especially during times when they had 5 or 6 of their kids not even in class for a couple weeks. So it's pretty exciting to be part of.
So to compare to a typical chart, there's nothing typical about the last 2 years. So yeah. I'd be curious to see what iReady, if they would ever release their information showing, what was a typical chart during this time, as opposed to, they may not do that till way in the future.
Yeah, I could.
What I would just say overall, in general, what the research has found is that the folks that have been affected the most are the youngest kids, and that math was impacted more than reading. And I think that shows up in our iReady data. Like when you look at the growth that 6th, 7th, and 8th graders made, they made really, nice growth. They moved right back into that. And then the piece that we'll be talking about in the future is that the pandemic affected some kids and some families differently. And so when we think about district resources, we may be looking at adding additional resources in places that either for individual students or for groups of students, either grade levels or, I know that we'll be talking to you in the future about additional resources for some of the students at Sunset Ridge. They have a larger number of students that fall into the unduplicated category, and were more adversely affected through the pandemic.
But economically, I mean, some parents could afford to have tutors or stay home from work and work with their students, and others had to go work 3 jobs, out on the front lines and not help them. So there's a big discrepancy there.
So that's one of our next stages as we develop the budget, is where do we put those COVID funds that are going to make the difference for the kids that were impacted on that way.
Okay. Thanks for all your work, Will.
Sure, yeah. And I can add just this, that there are students that are recovering more quickly from the in person, and there's students that it's going to take some time. There's going to have to be some, it's going to take time.
I think we'll be surprised how fast some recover.
Yeah.
I mean, there'll be some that won't, but some will recover faster than we expect.
Yeah.
Okay, Trustee Burkini, do you have any comments, questions?
Both the previous trustees asked the main questions I had. So, but I guess I just want to reiterate that I think it's really important that we address the lower third that are really needing help. And if that's some sort of help over the summer or, additional resources at the beginning of next year, I think it's really important because, a lot of these kids often were out because it wasn't their fault. They had COVID, they had to follow the protocols, and then now they come back, they're a week and a half behind and they're struggling. So I just want to make sure we're addressing those kids and not losing them because they feel discouraged by just the consequences of COVID. So.
Thank you, Will. The next item on the agenda is the LCAP and budget update. This is Mr. Lucy again.
Yes, so.
While you're getting that up, I'll just give a little bit of an intro in terms of this one, is that I don't know if you remember the February meeting where Will gave a 45-minute presentation and he didn't even read all of the slides that were in there. That's really our LCAP update, but we're very well positioned for the next steps of our LCAP because we have a data source. We're starting to think about who are those kids that have that need. And so then as we think about that, what are the resources in the budget that go behind that? Mr. Lucy, I toss this off to you.
All right, I'd like to first point out it was 32 minutes. I timed it. That previous, not 45. Sorry, I had to throw that in there. So this is the LCAP update, and again, as Heather said, is that this presentation is a little more about the process piece. The first thing is that this is a 3-year plan, and sometimes that gets forgotten in there because we called last year or this year's one the 21-22 LCAP, and the next year's one the 22-23. And yes, they are separate in some degrees, but this is really a 3-year plan. So the goals and actions were put in place as a 3-year plan. There may need to be adjustments to some of those actions and even metrics and even the services, definitely the services based off the new data that we have. But this is a 3-year plan. And I just saw this quote and I thought this quote was kind of apropos about it. The LCAP is a 3-year plan that describes the goals and actions and expenditures to support positive student outcomes and that address state and local priorities. The LCAP provides an opportunity for local agencies or districts to share their stories of how, what, and why programs and services are selected to meet local needs. So I thought that was something that gave kind of a little more direction on this. So when we were first developing our first year of the 21-24 LCAP, there were 3 areas of focus. Our first area of focus was around recovery because we were coming out of distance learning. So there was this, and we're coming out of COVID, and then we were kind of in waves of COVID. So there was this recovery, and then mental health support was on the forefront of our minds because a lot of these, they had to kind of get re-engaged to school and try to be safe at the same time. And there was a lot of effects on our students and staff's mental health support. And then academics, there was the idea around that was an area of focus is because there was this thought that there was going to be a lot of loss of academics that was lost during the time we were in distance learning. The process of the LCAP for the 22-23 school year is the first we need to review and monitor our 21-22 LCAP, which we've been doing since the beginning of the year. And then the next part is engaging educational partners. And I'll kind of touch on this a little later, but that's not just those planned meetings for LCAP engagement, but also these other times that we've met or got input or have gotten ideas that are around what students need, what supports need to be in place, and even particulars about certain disaggregated groups of students. And then make adjustments and edits to the metrics and actions based on the input and data to the LCAP for the 22-23. So then, we've engaged our educational partners. We looked at our data, and we would make adjustments to the 21-22 so that it would represent the 22-23 LCAP year. And then the final part is actually more of the compliant piece around making sure that all the components of the LCAP are presented at a public hearing for board review and approval. And those are all those areas below. Review and monitoring of the 21-22 LCAP. So as Dr. Olson stated, we presented on February 9th with that one-time supplement to the annual update for the 2021-22. And that was a part of our reviewing monitoring, is going through each of those actions and answering those prompt questions was around this idea of where we're at. And that included a mid-year update board presentation, which again, we looked at our mid-year outcome data as related to the metrics that we had in our 21-22 LCAP. And then we also looked at our expenditures and the implementation data on all actions identified. So we looked at, what's been implemented, what hasn't been implemented, what was intended to be implemented, but couldn't be implemented because of COVID-related reasons, or we just weren't ready to start on that action. And remember, when we were looking at the 21-22 LCAP, we were looking at it as a 3-year plan. And then our engagement with our educational partners. So part of that engagement is the student, staff, and family surveys, which is given out twice a year. We already gave it out once, and then we're planning again to give it out in April. And then the weekly certificated and classified meetings. We had our return to school task force. That was part of the engagement in when we were developing the 21-22, and will also affect how we move forward. Our return to school work group. We're presently part of this Pacifica NSK 12 stakeholder working group. That's part of our engaging with our partners. And then we have our Parent Advisory Council, Special Education Parent Advisory Council, and then their District English Language Learner Advisory Committee. We've already had one LCAP engagement meeting with our Special Education Parent Advisory Council and a follow-up meeting. And we have one planned next week for our Parent Advisory Committee and our District English Learner Advisory Committee. And then our labor partner consultations that we're hoping to schedule those sometime later in March to consult with them. I forgot that I had a slide on this. So this is our plan so far. In fact, our Parent Advisory Committee meeting actually has been scheduled. It's March 17th. That's next week. It's on March 17th. So that actually has been scheduled. Our District English Advisory is 2 days earlier, March 15th. We had a February 1st and March 1st, 7 p.m. where we were. February 1st, I presented a bunch of information around the LCAP, and then March 1st, they were able to add in to a document their input. And then again, we're still scheduling the LSEA and the CSEA consultation. The SELPA, we have a consultation that's through the county on March 16th at 3 p.m. And then the board work study on LCAP and budget is May 11th. And then our public hearings on June 1st, and then the recommendation for approvals June 15th. These are specifically focused LCAP engagement meetings. And then making the adjustments and edits to our metrics and actions for the 22-23 school year. So the spring survey for students and staff will include a focus on SEL. There's going to be not an added, but it's going to be adjusted so that we have that, and that's going to help with our looking at our metrics and seeing if we need to realign or add metrics to any of our 3 goals, especially goal 3. The reading and math iReady baseline, we're set. has been set. The second diagnostic has been given, and the third diagnostic will determine a need to adjust the desired outcomes. Like I had mentioned earlier in the iReady presentation, is that we are pretty close to what our previously determined desired outcome is. So we may need to adjust that to be a little more aggressive in trying to get that percentage of at-risk down.
Would you mind moving it along?
Sorry.
Let's go.
Based on educational input, a metric will be added. Okay, so, and then actions, just like in any year with the LCAP, they will be adjusted and moved based off implementation and or COVID-related circumstances, or even capacity issues. Our capacities to be able to do that. Questions? Did I move quick enough?
Yes, thank you, Will. Trustee Burkini?
No questions.
Trustee Bradal?
No questions.
Trustee Villalobos?
No questions.
Okay, we've already done the lottery update. So 10N, 2022 CSBA Delegate Assembly election. Dr. Olson?
Perfect. Thank you, Will, for that presentation. This is something that has to be done while we are together because we have to put this in the mail. So for CSBA, we vote for 3 candidates, and there were 4 on the list. And so last time it was 3 candidates and 3 on the list, but now we have to make a choice. The 4 candidates are Noelia Corzo, who's a San Mateo Foster City trustee that I worked with before, Clayton Koo of just north Jefferson Elementary School District. He's been with them for a while. Sophia Lane at Cabrillo Unified, and Patricia Murray of South San Francisco. So we just need 3 to move forward.
I would go with the first 3 that you mentioned.
Noelia from San Mateo Foster City, Mr. Koo from Jefferson, and Sophia Lane. Yes. Anybody else want to?
I only know Clayton Koo, so I definitely would endorse him.
I don't know any of them, so I'm okay with whatever we decide to vote.
Yeah, and I'm fine with Varun's recommendation.
Perfect. So Laverne, would you like to make a motion to nominate Noelia, Clayton, and Sophia?
I make a motion to nominate Clayton Koo, and who is Natalia?
Noelia.
Oh, Noelia.
And Sophia.
And Sophia.
Have a second.
I'll second, and just add in that Clayton was from Terra Nova.
Barbara, will you take the roll call vote, please?
Sure. Trustee Bradal?
Yes.
Trustee Burkini?
Yes.
Trustee Doggett?
Yes.
Trustee Villalobos?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0. Thank you.
And 10O, Working Group on Priorities and Funding Update. Dr.
Okay. First of all, I want to thank Linda for trying to move this up to the front. It is really, actually, I think some of the part that people have a hard time understanding is how you make decisions and how you get groups of people to move in the same kind of common direction. And so even prior to the pandemic, we had not done a strategic plan, had not really kind of set out goals with the new superintendent in terms of how we use resources and where we're using. So it's perfect timing coming out of the pandemic to do that. But I also know that based on both negotiations and having a limited amount of funds, that we wouldn't be able to do everything. And so the hard part is we know that we can't do everything, but if we're not using the resources that we have to get us where we need to be, then we're wasting an opportunity, especially at a time that there is a little bit extra money, either with COVID or just now where we're right now considered in that basic aid district. So Nate Levinson is the gentleman that's helping facilitate the groups. We've now had our second group, or our second meeting. We meet every third Tuesday from 5 to 6:30. This one was a little bit more of him talking because he presented some best practices around how some districts have chosen to use limited resources. So an example he gave was providing mental health services using community providers and how districts would capitalize on that and use that. We talked a lot about salary because everyone that's in that virtual room agrees that our salaries are too low. So how is it that we can strategize? We can't necessarily give everybody the largest raise, but what's the greatest need? And one of the pieces that came out, I don't want to reveal too much around what that conversation is because it needs to have chance to take hold and to people to think about it. But we did talk about, like, would it help if we looked at the segment, if we looked at new teachers and increasing that salary? And so no decisions have been made, but it just is beginning the discussion with staff members. There are 3 LSEA members and 3 CSEA members and parents, just beginning that conversation. So one of the big takeaways is alignment and making sure that we have a message that we're all contributing to that message. So each person was assigned a little bit of homework over the next couple days, and we'll take that, and Mr. Levinson will take that and present that back to us. So what questions do you have?
I love Laverne.
Can I think about how I'm going to ask it first and come back? Thanks.
Trustee Bradell.
No question. It's just great to get everybody's input. So I think I know it's all time consuming and more meetings for everybody, but I think it's really good to have the task force.
Trustee Burkini.
I just want to reiterate what Trustee Bradell just said. I think I really appreciate everyone's time putting into this, and I think it's going to come out with great results and ultimately be great for the district. So thank you.
I also want to reiterate that this is a good step in the right direction.
While Laverne is working on formulating her question, one of the things is that the outcome will be a set of recommendations that will come to you. Ultimately, this committee doesn't make the decisions. That's your choice. But I think that by having this level of input, it will be well developed, and there'll be significant buy-in on that. Trustee Villalobos.
I'm just wondering about Nate's qualifications. I forgot what it is that he's doing.
His most recent thing is he is the new president of, I actually have it right here, New Solutions K-12. His previous experience is he's been a superintendent, he's been a board member, but for many years worked, trying to think about the name of the company, district management or DM management. He was a president of that company for some period of time, and now he has moved into his own company, which is New Solutions K-12. I don't mean to make a plug. Let's see, where is it? He's written 2 books that I thought I just had sitting right here, but he's written 2 books on finance. I just read one on 6 moves for special education. If you had to describe what his niche is, it's around, we all think, oh, we can't do this. We can't, this is too hard. We can't do this. We have low revenue. We can't have salaries. How is it? It's we have to get past that. This isn't going to be easy and we can't do everything, but at some point we have to, we talked about it with the COVID discussion, is this community figures out ways to do things, and it's not going to be the traditional way to do things. And so his area of expertise or niche, I would say, is around thinking about unconventional ways to do things. And so in our last discussion, we discussed kind of 9 fiscal best practices that would just kind of bend that curve just a little bit. So we want higher salaries. Well, could we think about higher salaries in this little piece, or what part of higher salaries do we need to do? So just getting people to think about what's the most important pieces.
I was just going to say, to quote somebody from the past, with our finances, you can have anything you want, but not everything you want. So it's a matter of what are our priorities, and I think this group will set the priorities.
Any other questions? Kai?
No questions from me. I think, like I said, good stuff.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So we are now at future agenda items, unless I have missed something on this very long agenda.
I can't believe we're at 9 or 10:20. We don't even have to do the extension. That's excellent. So the one date that I want you to hold, and it has not been confirmed by school services yet, is I think a big piece of our work for next year and for our LCAP will be around the outcomes that come out of that special education study. And in terms of the work, we hope that it will be done in May. And if we could do a work study, they would present some of that piece to us, and we would be able to ask questions. So I just tentatively held Wednesday, May 4th, but I have not had confirmation from them that they are either available or that it will be done yet. I just at some point had to set a target so that we can get all this work done. At the next board meeting, we are going to talk about summer plans, which includes summer school, extended school year. John Bartfield is going to give a presentation on school climate update, and we hope to share some of that panorama data with you. I have not checked with PTO presidents and the PEF president, but that meeting is typically where we would do that at the end of March. Any other topics? We're going to have as you can see from this meeting, we're going to have a very busy spring.
Have any other agenda items, future agenda item? I'm getting sleepy. All right, I guess we can end the meeting. So we are going to adjourn at 10:24 p.m.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night. Bye, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.